was aware of some articles that I heard.
Okay, yeah.
No?
No, we need to do,
Appreciate
The
that.
first part of it is your meeting. I just want to let everybody know, this is a little bit of an odd meeting tonight. This is a Conservation Commission meeting for agenda item number 1. And then it's a joint meeting for agenda item number 2.
okay.
Although, because the planning board has involvement with agenda item number 1, I think it's beneficial to, I'm hopeful the planning board can weigh in on one issue in particular.
All right. So I need to start.
I've never done it this way before, I've always done it, started off and heated off.
However you want to handle it, I just want to make sure everybody knows how this thing should push.
You got it.
I've got it, okay. Welcome to the Town of Millington's Conservation Commission meeting on Thursday, February 10th, 2022. And our first item is review of the New Hampshire DES dredge and fill permit and landscaping plan for Stone Face Brewery.
Good evening, Steve Hyde with Civil Works, with Stoneface Brewing Company. We have Luke Hurley from Gove Environmental Services here as well. We've got Jeff Hyland from Ironwood Landscape. Also the owners from Stoneface here as well. You can answer questions you might have. So very specifically, this is the site on Shattuck Way that's bordered on River Road and Shattuck at the corner. And what you're looking here on this plan set right now is the proposed building, as well as the annex building here as well. And what we're actually looking for tonight for a minimum expedited application for the for Wetlands Bureau is a 232 square foot impact to the wetland down on this side over here. We also have a 400 foot setback. Actually, we have both of those. Just the lower one. 200 square foot down at the bottom. So minimum expedited is what we're looking at for today. The landscaping plan in the package, pretty comprehensive. And Jeff is here if you guys have any specific questions on that. Your plan schedule is normal, is mostly native, as well as what you guys typically have in your list. Just a little bit. Just a little bit down.
And that's being impacted because of the road?
Nope, it's being impacted for stormwater controls for the annex building.
Talks about dredging in the package that I received, but it doesn't really describe dredging. It talks about the certain amount of material being taken out and spread around. Go into the dredging that can be done.
So this is the dredge and fill. It's just the terminology that we use for the New Hampshire DES Wetlands Bureau. Luke is here. He can explain exactly the nuances in terms of relative to dredge and fill. But that section of impact, so dredge and fill is the impact area that we're proposing for jurisdictional wetland. So in terms of this, we're talking 230 square feet. So volume-wise, times 2, maybe 300 cubic feet.
So it's going to be dredged out. You would think, right?
Yeah, we'll be digging it up, that's correct.
And the dredge material, what's happening with the dredge material?
John, what would you do with the dredge material?
You know, if it was organic, we would probably get to it along and reuse it.
Yeah, so if it's organics, then they would just reuse it on site, mix it in with the loam.
So what you're talking about, very basically, is 30 dump trucks. 30 yards.
300 divided by 27, 10 yards, one dump truck.
Not 30 yards? So you're saying 300
300 cubic feet
is 10 yards?
is 10 yards.
Okay, so if 10 yards is correct, then that's one dump truck, just to put it into perspective.
Yeah, one dump truck.
Okay. The other question I have is, what is the current watershed from the existing parking lot? And how is it being treated, and how is it going to be any differently affected than what it currently is now?
Very good question, because there is no treatment for the existing building that's there now. So part of the development, which would be this auxiliary building that we're talking about, we would be putting in treatment swales for the building itself as well as the parking lot. And so this detention area, 4-bay, after-bay, would be utilized to mitigate the impact of this entire proposed building. Good question, thank you. And so to do that, that's that impact area that we're talking about right here in the section of wetland. It's really just digging a trench out to allow the water to go somewhere.
Understand, keeping it away from the wetlands.
Pardon me?
I'm sorry, keeping it away from the wetlands.
Yes, correct.
Go back to this, there's a statement in the permit that says the dredging project is the subject of property. Has it been checked for any contamination in that area where it's going to?
Check for contamination?
That's what the question is, you know, the dredging project, so this is the dredging project. Is the subject of property contaminated? It says no. I'm just trying to understand how we know that.
We have not done any investigation on the site itself, but this has already been through the planning board as well. This is a previously developed site. I don't know what the answer to your question is relative down here, but I know this whole site had been previously approved, gone through the approval process and reclaimed as part of Eversource project. Luke, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. Just,
Can I get your name, sir?
yes, Luke Hurley, Gulf Environmental Services. Just a little bit of a clarification, because you had asked about the dredge and fill aspect of it. Way back when the Wetlands Bureau was established, projects either dredge or fill. And I think the way you're thinking of dredging is when we're dredging out, the Hampton River, or the Piscataqua down line, where all spray terminals are and stuff like that. When it applies to dredging, that's what they're thinking of. They have the big clamshell bucket, it digs up all this stuff, and then where are you gonna put that? That's what that refers to in the application, is if you're doing a dredging project in a river, is that material contaminated? And if it is, where are you gonna put it? For this, they're really just gonna be doing some earthwork, moving some stuff around, taking some material out, regrading it, making it work for the drainage and stuff like that. So it's not really a dredge, it's not really a fill, it's just an impact. But I think the way you're thinking of the dredge aspect is when you're doing a big dredge of, a large amount of material coming out of a bed of a river or something like that.
So the material coming out, is it just vegetation that's decaying?
Yeah, because it's just kind of a combination of shrub, a little bit of emergent stuff on the side of the bank. So they'll just, cut whatever they need to, and then just, my guess is with a little excavator, a little machine, just dig it out and then regrade it and make it work. So it's not so much of a dredging as you have a big, river dredging to remove the sediment that's built up over the years.
So we say it's vegetation that's decayed over time, we're just kind of scooping it out of it.
Yeah, it's just root mass, some dirt that's around it, and that kind of stuff just coming out. So it's essentially clean material. There haven't been any spills or anything here. So it's just that 232 square feet of material is coming out, and then it is going to regrade it and rework it.
Let's run that one more time through, but I think we'll end up with a good answer. When you dredge natural elements out, what we've experienced before in this town is whenever dredging has come up, we've had the issue of the Air Force Base and the chemicals coming into the water. This is a scenario where, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
Jim, does someone have the microphone on? We're getting a ton of feedback from someone.
I don't need a microphone, trust me.
Let's take everyone has their microphone on off.
Just turn them all off.
Turn them off, turn mine off.
He said it.
So here's my question for you.
Yes.
What I see is the difference in what you're doing, or I think is the difference between your dredging and what we have when conservation looks at dredging. They look at it as what contaminants are you bringing up, given the oyster farms, given the rivers, and everything else that's going on. We know there's some nasty stuff under there that we may or may not know about. This type of thing is on the other side of the highway. The worst that I can think that would be in there would be the salt and the chemical agents from the road. Therefore, what I'm trying to always look at is, will this wetlands get back to the bay or to the river? And what you're doing is, you're taking out, you may be exposing more of the nasty elements that were used in the 50s, 60s, 70s on the highway, but it's still self-contained. So I don't see that moving that dirt and shaping it so that you're getting the water flow to not so much go into the swale, but to go into your new drainage ditch with your water that has a chemical in it that will be in the winter and used, but you're putting it outside of the wetlands. Am I getting the picture
Yeah,
correctly?
Steve might have to touch on that too, but I think in terms of the stormwater stuff that's coming in, correct, it's gonna be going into these two areas. This is really just an overflow. Just an overflow, which, in any plan you ever see that's put before you, that's where it goes, down to the wetlands, because it's gotta go downhill. Steve had said that they did do a phase 1A out here, which is the environmental phase 1As. Are there any dumps? Are there any oil barrels? Are there any Studebakers in the wetland? That kind of stuff. And I believe it came back negative. So, yeah, and there's no real water flowing through here so much, even though it's shown as a wetland. There's not a stream or a brook or anything. So once they take this material out, it's not going to release anything and then flush it downhill to the bay as you're asking. It's just, then they have to put silt fence or erosion control around the entire wetland and the area where they're working. So if I'm digging this out right here, my wetlands here, my silt fence is all across here, so nothing goes into the wetland. And that's the rule that the Wetlands Bureau has. So that's all going to be protected for the rest of the wetland anyway. So there's not going to be any flow or transfer of anything. So it's got to come out, and as I said, if it's clean, good material, which is probably organic anyway, they're just going to mix it with that loam and use it for landscaping.
I apologize for beating a dead
No,
horse.
it's okay.
I just want to help clarify what you said. You're going to be doing, of course, the temporary, and then what I thought I heard you say is you're creating a pathway so that it will not go back towards the wetland, but will follow your new path into your holding area, or will both happen?
That's the drainage aspect, yeah.
It actually does both. So right now, the water does flow down into the wetland area. So what we're doing is we're treating all of the building and the parking lot, putting it through a detention area and 4-bay after bay. And then the discharge from that, if it leaves there, would end up going through this little swale, eventually back into the wetland. Yeah,
If
no
I could
question.
just add one thing is that what I think there may be a little confusion is, this is no different than excavation and soil disturbance in the upland areas. It just is, it meets the 3 criteria of a wetland, the soil, the hydrology, and the vegetation. So it just like anywhere else on the site, it just meets the criteria of a wetland.
Thank you.
Do you have any more?
No, thanks for
Questions on-
talking about it. and explaining it.
So, is there any more, no other discussions? Does the planning board have any questions?
Yeah, Dennis Hebert, there's a pile of loam is there right now. It was meant to stay on site. I assume it's gonna be staying on site, even if you have to put loam or put heat.
Yes.
All right, none of it's gonna be hauled off.
As per your rules and regs, that's correct. It stays on
And
site.
contractors or anybody doesn't grab some and say, well, we don't need this here, we're gonna take it off site, cut it with sand, and then bring it back. I wanna make sure that loam stays there and remains on site. I just wanna make a commitment from you, because that's what that loam was put there for, and that it just doesn't, leave the site.
Yeah, that's a standard note on all the site plans here in town, subdivision site plans as well, so it is actually on your
Because I
plan.
know trees like to have deep roots, and right now I'm seeing where you're putting the trees along the parking lots and so forth are not, there's not a whole lot of space there for the trees to grow, so the more loam they have, the better off they're gonna be.
Make no mistake, there's gonna be plenty of room because this is a fill site. So we got plenty of room for the material that's here on site as well as the loom.
I meant for the trees
Yeah,
that
the
you're gonna be
trees.
planting.
Yeah, these planting areas as well, and Jeff has a pretty comprehensive plan that shows that as well.
Okay.
Jake, I have another question. Getting to the sensitive species, it states that there's no recorded occurrences of sensitive species near the proposed project area. Have you done any survey or anything to check for sensitive species?
So we're required to file with the state, it's called an NHB, Natural Heritage Bureau, and if it comes back with hits, then you would have a more comprehensive review. But when there's no hits, the answer is that when the wetland scientist, soil scientist goes out, he takes a review anyway. So the short answer is that with no hits, we wouldn't do a follow-up report at all. But if there's a hit, you would, but in this case, there are none, and Luke would have looked at that anyways.
So did you look at anything for the sensitive species?
I just shout.
No,
Just shout from the chairs. No, we have been out there, over a couple iterations of this plan. With Golden Environmental, I've been involved with KF Moran. We did the delineation soil map. And then this time, when Steve reached back out, we looked at it again, did another walk, updated the soil map, all that stuff. We've never seen anything out there in the times that we've done the delineation or any of the site reconnaissance out there. And as Steve had said, they did the NHB request, and it came back with no hit, so it came back negative. So there's no known species or occurrences out there.
yeah, and I understand, nobody ever looks, you never find anything, right? So that's why I'm interested in.
No, we did, as part of just the overall work on the project over the past several years, you know, we always, while we're out there, we always do a cursory look. I mean, as you know, as part of the whole Frank's Farm thing that was going on, that we also did with our office. That thing was just mountains of dirt and then the big blue dumpsters, and so that really, if there was anything there, which there wasn't at the time, and then after all that material was gone, those dumpsters were taken out, and now it's just flat gravel pads. So there isn't a lot of habitat value out there anyway.
Okay, so you walked around the whole
Oh,
project?
absolutely, yeah, we've been out there several times.
Yeah, no, I found it interesting in the plan for the landscape and so forth, talking about the construction, looking at, especially for the rear hurdles and so forth. So
Yeah, that's one of the standard notes that I always put on plans anyway, is that just if they're already in the found, then there's a whole sequence of events that you have to go through.
So in the wetland areas, you didn't really see any kind of
No.
activity there?
Nope.
Thank you.
Did you see any invasive species?
There are some in various spots. I mean, there's purple loosestrife, as you would imagine, along the roadside. In some areas of that, not so much in the interior, but on the edges, you know, along the side roads, especially at the front, right off the
I
side.
thought I saw somewhere that it said there weren't any, and I found that kind of surprising, but.
Yeah, I mean, there's
now I
the
can't
typical
find
purple
it.
loosestrife here and there, but
Yeah.
that's really it.
Yeah, okay. Phil, any more? So we need to make a motion?
So Jane, just to be, so you know, or whoever's tracking, you don't have a quorum right now?
Yeah,
So did you appoint Jane Kendall?
yes, she,
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I walked out to make some copies, I'm sorry.
well, I mean, she's our
Sorry,
alternate.
you guys didn't, okay.
Jane, before you make a motion, there's actually one thing I do want to touch base on. I didn't know if I missed a meeting or not, but I didn't. There's the building at the end, the storage building, let's just call it that for right now. When you were here the first time, I understand they're gonna take down the front and they're gonna make it just a square and they wanna use it for storage. The statement that I made is, you're building this beautiful location. The building is what it is. What are they gonna do to beautify that building, to make the whole property nice? Because you drive past this gorgeous
The building
building.
is being raised and rebuilt.
It's being rebuilt.
Well, it's gonna be torn down and rebuilt.
It was
this
the day you recused yourself and left.
Oh, good, that's why, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yes, Chris?
Just a comment overall, that, this proposal is a good one. However, it came to both the planning board and the conservation commission would already have gotten certain variances from the board of adjustment. I think you're familiar with that, mostly in setbacks. And unfortunately, setbacks is where we create space for landscaping and for drainage. And this site is already relatively flat. River Road is one of the oldest roads still unchanged or rebuilt from 50, 60 years ago. And the elevation doesn't change much, and the swales on the side tended to fill in. While previous applicants on the property along River Road, this one, have accounted for their runoff to collect and treat it before entering. There's a concern in my mind that overall the change in elevation is so slight and the soil is very wetlandish or mucky after many years and decades there. But the swales that are left, particularly on the backside, leave very little room for a drainage that goes beyond just a 2 or 3 day storm that our regs address. And by having the setbacks for parking as was deemed required, leaves very, very little space for the trees in the back, and the roots that Dennis was talking about can go down into the soil, but it's very shallow. And I think what we're gonna see in this whole area is some, when we have a long 40-day storm or whatever, we're gonna see some real flooding here. Because there is no width on the sides of River Road to absorb both this property and the previous ones. And because of that, with the trees planted as close as they are to what turns out to be the River Road town property, there's going to be the inability to dig any depth once the trees get mature and bring their roots down to where the water is. So I don't know what to do with that, but I just wanted to make the point that when applications like this come forward and preempt setbacks, they cause problems and difficulties in drainage that we really need to look at as to how the landscaping is still can be done in the room that's left, and how the overall drainage flow can be done, not just for treatment, but for the overall drainage of the reason. So from that standpoint, and particularly, I will address that the south end of this property still has not been resolved, nor does it have a waiver for the pavement that is within the setback.
Can we talk about that outside of Concom?
That's a planning board issue.
Yeah, and I have an answer for you for that as well, so we'll go through that. So yeah, for tonight, for the Conservation Commission, what we're asking for is minimum expedited for that minor wetland fill that we're talking about now. The landscape plan that Ironwood has put together, that you guys have seen here as well, in terms of, actually, which plan am I? Sorry.
Let's just deal with,
Yeah, we're
Steve,
gonna
let's
deal with
focus
the-
on the wetland permit right
Yeah.
now. We got a long meeting, so.
Right. So, do we, I need an emotion to accept this or refuse it or what? Please let me know. 3 members.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
recommend approval to DES.
Okay, can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, those all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We have that.
Gene, I have you need to sign, how many you want to sign, Steve?
So we need 4 for the town, 1 for the state, and 1 for us. So if you have 6 copies, we can
You
get.
can organize these and pass them to Gene. to
Yeah,
sign.
and
Just get
where I
this
need
open
to
for
sign.
signature page. And whoever has, what do you need, 2 more? Or
We
one?
have one here.
Okay. It's the second to last page.
Yes, 6 out of 7. So now we'll move on to.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
so we have to talk about the landscaping plan for Stone Face, but there's one more thing that I think the planning board it'd be helpful for the planning board to weigh in on. And that is, Steve, can you pull the site plan open to show the. Yeah. So this is not really. So, I don't know what sheets you had, you don't have an entire plan set, but there's this, one of the complicating factors with this site is it, as Chris said, it's flat, it's long and flat. so getting stormwater to move has been problematic. What typically would happen, and what I think we'd all like to see, is water to be carried in a pipe down the site and discharged into the wetland. However, the applicant has run into a problem with DES. There's a roadside wetland that's right here. And I can't really speak for the planning board, but I think the sense of the planning board is that if that was allowed to be filled, which I can tell you is a pretty low value roadside wetland, then there's a huge drainage system here that's, I think, a 10,000 gallon underground drain, storm drain tank, really. And with backup, a pump and a backup pump, and that pumps the water down to the wetland. So the water ultimately gets to the same spot. But the reason I wanted to talk about this before we talk about landscaping is, would the Conservation Commission have any issue or support the filling of that roadside wetland? And if you do, I think we'd be willing to go to meet with DES and see if that would be a better alternative than tanking the water underground and pumping it.
John, can I say something?
Sure.
At this point, who's running the meeting? I just wanna know. Is this a,
This is still conservation.
Still conservation, so we were moving on to the landscaping, which,
yeah, but John was just talking about something that deals with the plan.
right,
And he's asking the Conservation Commission what they think of it,
right,
That's
of
what I-
wetlands.
of wetlands,
So,
right.
so,
So you're talking about that area we're in?
yeah, look.
Go ahead.
So what this is you have existing roadside ditches on Shattuck Way, and there's an area that's just upstream of an existing culvert here that's spawned up over time, and it's been classified as a wet. Luke is here, he's looked at it, we've had several other wetland scientists look at it as well, and I think the general consensus is that it's a low value, low function wetland. In your packet for the dredge and fill application, one of the last photographs is of that area. It basically takes all the road runoff off of Shattuck Way, and it flows in this area, piles up here a little bit, and then flows in through into the existing wetland on the site. So when we looked at the site, we had two options. One of them was to grade and design the site to be able to come back into the roadside ditch. The requirements for DES and the state and so forth is for us to provide treatment for that stormwater. To provide treatment and attenuation for stormwater, not only for our site, a portion of our site, but also for Shattuck Way, we would have to impact that wetland. So it's roughly 2,025 square feet. Yeah, 2,000 square feet or so of this area here. So we looked at two options. One of them was to create a treatment swale on this whole edge, dig out this wetland here, what's considered to be a roadside ditch wetland, and create some type of detention and treatment in that area before it had a chance to get into the wetland. So we would treat not only Shattuck Way, but also our site. We met on site with DES, and we reviewed that, both Joe and Luke, and I've had many conversations with DES as well. And they said, well, it's a wetland, we don't want you to dredge it, we can let you put water through it, but we don't really want you to do anything to that wetland, which then required us to look at an alternative drainage system for the site. So when we went to the planning board, and you get staff, engineering review, and planning board review as well, and what we've ended up having to do is, as much water as we can get going into conventional systems, like this building goes into an infiltration system here, the road, the whole parking lot goes into infiltration systems all through this system here, into a treatment swale here. But what ends up happening is you have a section of the site here that has no place to go anymore, and ends up going into, as John pointed out, a collection system, in this case a 10,000 gallon tank, like a big septic tank, with a couple of pumps in it, 13 horsepower pumps. And what we've done is we've analyzed the storm events, and what happens is we have to pump the storm water back up into here, into the treatment system we have here before it gets discharged to the wetland. Not the optimal way to handle stormwater. And so part of the conversation tonight would be, and I think the general consensus of what John was indicating to the planning board, was that if the Conservation Commission were of the same mind, that this wetland, even though it's it's a wetland, low functions and values, a much more comprehensive stormwater control system for the site as well as Shattuck Way. And I have a sketch for you, and I can provide all this stuff to you guys as well if you want to get into that. But the short answer is capturing Shattuck Way, putting it into a treatment system here, having a little bit of a detention in this area. Now you've treated all this runoff as well as the area of our site gets treated, then it gets discharged, and then before it gets into the wetlands. Right now, there is no treatment of the stormwater that comes off Shattuck Way before it flows into this wetland here now. So it's by far our preferred methodology. We can enhance what's out here. There's nothing there now. So anything we do is going to be better, but it provides us a much cleaner area to take care of. Yeah.
Briefly, can you explain, just to articulate so that I understand, why the pump system is a problem, number one? And the second thing is, you're suggesting that the Conservation Commission might agree to allowing you to fill in that small wetland area, which they would be overriding DES's recommendation by writing a letter to DES? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, so we have nothing, there's nothing in writing for, so I'll answer the second question first, and go backwards. So we've had an on-site, call it a pre-application meeting with DES. And so that pre-application meeting with DES was feedback that we get from them both verbally and an email coming back and saying, yeah, we really not want you to touch this in terms of dredging. So our hope is that with the endorsement of both the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board, that DES may say that this, from a standpoint of doing much more treatment than just our site, but also Shattuck Way, which is not being treated, they may be more inclined to say, okay, we get that. So if, that short answer, with your endorsement, you guys understand what we're trying to accomplish here, they may be swayed. We have no idea if that's gonna fly or not, but we're hoping that that would be, hopefully, yes.
So what exactly is the treatment? What will you
Joe?
have to do to that site?
And your name before you speak?
Joe Griffin, Civil Works.
What was the name?
Joe Griffin. So essentially, what we have right now is we have approximately 3/4 of an acre of Shattuck Way that drains off from the road into the roadside ditch and makes its way to the wetland untreated. What this is it's approximately a 350-foot grass treatment swale designed in accordance with alteration of terrain requirements for the treatment of stormwater. That swale is designed to not only take approximately, I believe it was about 1 acre of our site, but it was also designed to take a full, I think it was 0.66 acres of Shattuck Way, treat it fully in compliance with alteration of terrain requirements. And then it was going to offer an additional some value for treatment of approximately another 1/4 of an acre for this portion of Shattuck Way that wouldn't flow entirely through that treatment swale, but through a portion of it.
So what's, so you're making a swale, you're putting what, certain specific plants in there, or?
So it's a grass-lined swale with a wetland-type grass, I believe, is what we would use. And it's a shallow swale, it slows down runoff, and it's designed to allow the maximum amount of time for that stormwater to run through that 350 feet.
And then does it go into a drain, like a drain or pipe
Yep.
system?
It would go into
Across.
a catch basin system across, and then there's another additional grass area that it would come through, and then it discharged into it. So the benefit of this is, it treats, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I believe it's almost an acre of Shattuck Way runoff, and even a little bit further up from our site, from the medical office building there as well.
So, to go to my first question, I think what I'm hearing is you're saying this would be a preferred, more passive treatment than to use pump systems. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. Yeah. So not to the KISS method, KISS. In this case, what we've designed will work, there's no mistake. It will work. It is maintenance, it's issues that they have to maintain. It's an institution that will maintain it, so it's not that it's gonna be forgotten because they have to maintain it. But the preferred methodology would be to keep it simple, which is typically what we wanna do with drainage, maintain and use the gravity to take care of a lot of that item. So that's really the secondary item. So part of that landscaping plan, what you see right now, does not include any of this work here, but it would be, you know, Jeff and Luke would come up with whatever we need to put in there for vegetation that would be conducive for what we're trying to produce here. And so as Joe pointed out, what our rationale to DES is, there's an acre's worth of Shattuck Way that's not being treated today. If we can utilize, and if we can do this, we can treat an acre of Shattuck Way plus a half an acre of our site as well. So we can treat an acre and a half of impervious type areas in an existing roadside swale and enhance that by doing what we're proposing here and keeping it simple, then the town has some benefit from that as well, being instructed by this development. So the ask for you guys would be, if you guys would consider that to be a good enough rationale to support what we would come in as a normal request to do. Again, it's under 3,000 square feet, so we're still looking like a minimum permit. So total impact is less than 3,000 square feet. So I think it's well within the realm of, you know, an ask that we would have with you guys as well.
So what's the comparison of maintenance of a swale versus the pumps?
Oh goodness. You have your 15-year-old son come out here and mow it,
I don't have a 15-year-old son.
and your 25-year-old son. But short answer is, it's just part of your landscape contractor comes in and mows it. The other part in here, your maintenance people, it's really, the system as it's set up is not that it's gonna fail, it's just that it's a little more maintenance intensive.
And so can the swale handle like our 100-year storms that we're
Yes.
seeing every year?
You're not, but I get it. Yes,
Yeah.
the answer is yes. So what Joe was indicating is, this is 350 feet long. So, you know, it's a very long treatment swale to be able to maintain exactly that, to hit all those different storm
It's
events.
also increased by 15%. Alteration of terrain requires us in the very good communities to bump up that stormwater runoff by 15%, and this site has incorporated that into the design as well.
So,
Any other questions?
So I guess what I would be looking for, Gene, is if the board, we're not recommending a permit, but I think, you know, if the board, if the Conservation Commission would be supportive of the applicant going in that direction, and I think the planning board would concur, then we would at least, you know, work with them and DES to see if this is a possibility. DES may ultimately say, no, we don't want to do it. So it's- you're not signing off on anything, you're just saying, you know, if this can be permitted and we agree with the permit ultimately, then we'll be supportive.
Do you have any discussions? Or members?
So the discussion is, it seems like this is the preferred way to go for the planning board, and it sounds reasonable to myself, for the same reasons, that been spoken here, so, I'm just trying to figure out what are we, you know, going back to John, what are we doing with this? What are we saying on that?
I don't know if you even know if you need to make a motion, but maybe if you could have a straw poll to say that you would be supportive of the filling, I guess a motion would be helpful. That you would like, that you would support the applicant and the town working with DES to,
request a dredge and fill.
to dredge and fill the area along Shattuck Way to allow the stormwater to be treated and via gravity versus the pump system that's proposed.
So we'd have a motion to support the applicants going back to the,
Yes, I think with the town's support, the Conservation Commission and ultimately the planning board support. Yep.
Somebody want to make that motion? Exciting.
I'll make a motion that the Conservation Commission will support the applicant's, request to dredge and fill the minor wetland
For
for stormwater treatment.
soil treatment.
I'll second
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. So now, we can move on to landscaping. I got some questions.
So, I just want to kind of, so this is my planning, the review that I did for the planning board for this project. If you look on page, two,
Two with the
and then
yellow.
there's two, and then over the three, there's just a few highlighted comments regarding land use that I thought you might find beneficial.
Right. Yes, yes. Yeah, those, there's two there. So we, is that enough after this? Is that enough? Five, right? Okay, so we have this landscape plan here. And, John definitely hit a few of my questions of, I like having multiple species, but I'm a little concerned about, I even color coded this, so I could figure out what the heck is going on, of having like species all together, because it basically becomes a monoculture, and if something comes in and gets, you basically wiped out the groupings.
Yeah, so to start off, for the record, my name is Jeff Hyland, H-Y-L-A-N-D.
Jeff, can you speak into the microphone?
Actually, I'm not sure.
No.
No, your turn. Little button, look up.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, so for the record, my name is Jeff Hyland. I'm a landscape architect with Ironwood Design Group. We're based out of Exeter. Very good questions that you just brought up about monocultures and pest control, and those are things that we are constantly struggling with as landscape architects designing planting plans. We also kind of try to balance design aesthetic as well. So when you mix up plants too much, it gets a little eclectic visual. So we're always kind of trying to strike that balance between maintaining a kind of diversity and creating some kind of visual continuity. So those two things can be at odds a bit with each other. And you bring up very good points about things of, areas of common plant varieties. In parking lots, you in particular show the plants in the parking lot, which are hornbeams. Hornbeams are relatively disease resistant. They don't have a lot of pests that go after them. That's not to say that there couldn't be pests. Over the years, a lot of new pests have emerged. But in general, hornbeams are very, I don't know of any pests actually that attack hornbeams. But, taking your comment, we can certainly look at ways of kind of breaking it up potentially a little bit more. Maybe going by, instead of having all hornbeam in the center of the parking lot, maybe we can kind of split it up a bit. So that there's still some visual continuity within the parking lot, as well as kind of breaking up the variety a bit. Absolutely. The other thing I will mention about parking lot plantings, it's a very difficult environment for trees. And in particular, when we're potentially adding stormwater to those areas, there are very few trees that will survive in that kind of condition. So when we do planting plans, we always look to the future, we want things to survive, and we always try to select plants that we believe are going to survive. All the plants that you see on this plan are urban tolerant, they're salt tolerant, and they're selected specifically for this site. It is an unusual site because it does have kind of underlying hydric soils and some gravelly soils, and then you've got a new use that's going to have a fair amount of kind of heat island effect, snow removal issues, salt, all of those things. So there are many layers of issues that come up when you're working with plants and trying to get them to survive in the long term.
Excuse me for one moment before you go on the hornbeam. Which species of hornbeam are you using? The plant blanket, the carbonus, which particular variety? That shapes and also dictates its abuse of salt.
Yeah, so the one we are using is the American hornbeam, so Australia virginiana.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then you have a dwarf European hornbeam too.
Correct, that's more up against the building, because that's kind of sculptural, and we understand, you know, the building itself has kind of this industrial look to it, and it's gonna have kind of a facade that I think would look real nice with the sculptural branching of that particular plant up against it.
So is there a problem with the hornbeam height? Something about the light poles? They're gonna be,
You know, that was mentioned. The light poles on the plan that we have are kind of in the center of the islands, and the trees are on either side of it. I don't think that's gonna be an issue, but we're gonna look at that again and particularly look at the type of light in particular.
Yeah, and the issue I have is that, you know, when those trees are 20 feet tall, the light is 20 feet tall, in the summer, the leaves are gonna block all the light. I just think there ought to be some stuff, we have plenty of island there, I don't know if the lights need to be there, but, I'm sure we can figure it out. But-
And I believe the lights are full dark sky compliant, so they're not putting all their light
down.
down.
Right, down
So-
into the, but those trees, I mean, the spread of those trees is pretty big.
They are. Now, what you're seeing on this plan is basically projected out probably 25 years.
Well, yeah, but they grow, the research I did is that they're gonna go 25 to 40 feet in height, and 2/3 of the height is the canopy, so 16 and a half to 20,
Correct.
26 feet. So again, that whole island, in short, you know, in 10 years,
Right.
is gonna be all tree. And the lights are gonna
Sure,
do very little in
absolutely.
the summertime
Yeah.
to get light to the ground, so.
And it would be great if they do
In the
grow.
winter, it's fine.
It would be great if they grow that much.
Well,
In an urban condition, it's very difficult to get trees to grow, like I was saying. But ideally, yes, that would be the size that we would like to see.
Is there gonna be irrigation?
I don't believe so, no.
So how are they gonna get water, especially for the first
They-
few years?
For the first year, it would be probably the responsibility of the contractor to do that. After that, they shouldn't really require it.
We have several droughts.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, we've tried to place the trees in locations that we felt would have enough soil volume that they would not need supplemental irrigation. But you're correct, I mean, every year is a little different. Weather does constantly change, so there may be a situation where the trees do need to be irrigated. But generally, it would not.
And how's the Princeton American elm survival rate?
It is fairly good, it's probably the best of all the new cultivars of elm.
Yeah.
We've, over probably the last, I think the first project I used that on was back in 2008. Probably on our projects, we've probably planted, you know, close to 500 of them around the state, and I don't believe any have died. We have a number of them on State Street in Portsmouth, they all look fantastic. But again, you're working with a plant that, or you're working with a plant, and things, there's always variability in the natural world. So you can never rule anything out, unfortunately.
So the first note, T, it was talking about the red maples not being salt tolerant, but I heard you say you had selected salt tolerant
Mhm.
trees, so how do you speak to that?
The red maple, from my standpoint, is salt tolerant. The sugar maple is the only tree I would say on this plant schedule that is not salt tolerant. And that is actually located pretty far away from the parking lot in an area that wouldn't see any salt. When it comes to salt tolerance, there's no steadfast rule. It's usually, if you look at different horticultural books, they will say different things. Just like they will say different, ultimate sizes. There's slight variations between cultivars, but generally it's not a significant difference. But my experience with red maples has been very good as a street tree. We can certainly look at that, though. We'll revisit all of this plant list for salt tolerance. But as far as I'm concerned, the only one that stands out as potentially being, but that I know is not really salt tolerant, is the sugar.
So Gene, the research that I did, I got in front of me, is the red maple is actually it has very low salt tolerance, and it also has low drought tolerance. Which, I just think that with the cost of the landscaping here, I'm surprised we don't want to irrigate it, but, I guess that's a conversation for another day.
You also were possibility of adding 4 more trees? Something about on the center stripe walkway?
Well, the center, my feeling is, and Eric Weiner is sitting next to me, he's a big advocate for cooling down parking lots.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big sea of asphalt out there. And it's kind of a cool design where they have a walkway down the middle of the parking lot. So those hash marks are breaks in the curves, so people can walk from one to the other. I think it'd be nice to put street trees on either side of the walkway, just to cool down that parking lot, because it's gonna be pretty hot in the summer. There's nothing we can do about the south end, because that's all tractor trailer maneuvering space, so there's nothing we can do to cool down. That's a sea of asphalt that has to be that way. But where the customer parking is, I think it's a pretty good opportunity to to add 4 more trees there, flanking the walkways.
Near trees.
Oh, I don't know about species, but something tall enough to give you a little shade, whatever Jeff recommends.
Yeah, we can certainly add trees to the center. I agree, that would definitely add some necessary shade.
And I think it also identify that walkway, and hopefully,
Mhm.
people my biggest fear is people are gonna park in it, but that's, we'll figure that out later,
Sure.
so.
Do you have any other discussions, questions?
One thing I will add, since there was a lot of discussion about the wetland areas, the hatch lines or the hatch marks that you see, that's a seeded, a wetland restoration seed mix that's being specified in that area. It comes from New England wetland plants. And one of the nice things about this is actually a wet meadow mix. And it has a variety of wetland species that do provide some flowering, some seasonal interest. Things like Joe Pye weed, which is particularly nice. It does provide some pollinator habitat. and some other kind of, there's New England aster. So we're trying to also, as part of these wetland areas and the wetland treatment areas, to actually expand the variety of plant material that exists out there. So we're kind of enhancing nature, maybe. So I think the idea really is to kind of work with nature and to embrace nature overall on this landscape plan, having the wildflower meadows, having the native varieties of trees, red twig dogwoods, fothergilla, highbush blueberry. All of those are kind of very interesting plants that you don't always see all that often.
Okay. Do you have any other?
One quick comment.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the nicest, well-out laid plans that I've ever seen from any landscape design company.
Great, thank
Second
you.
page and your instructions of how you're gonna actually do the installation, this is outstanding.
Thank you.
Jim, don't ever say that until we get to the end of the project.
Right.
This page stands by itself. If they follow these instructions,
Yeah,
this is
and
beautiful.
like having more than like 3 trees that are usually presented, it's like a neat.
So, like I said, it's getting more and more challenging because
Yes, yes.
our list of good trees seems to be shrinking.
Right,
So
right, and
it does get tough.
the bugs are getting worse. Okay, so,
So you guys are gonna, I don't, you don't need to know if you need to make a motion, but I'm assuming that you're gonna ask Jeff to revise the plan, to look at salt tolerance, to look at a little bit of, mixing up the species, and then adding those 4 trees, looking at the lights at the end of the hammerhead, and then come back with a revised plan, is that fair?
Yes.
Is that what you're
yes,
trying to? Okay.
that sounds good.
Cool.
And maybe, you could put a little bit more information on the wetland.
On the swale.
Swales, yes,
Yep.
that would be good too. Anything else that needs to be, okay? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Next,
So now, Jane, I think now we're gonna, because of the statute, yeah, I think Dennis, as the
access
chairman of
to
the planning board,
Dennis,
should take over, now that we're going into the presentation with DOT,
right.
about the maintenance facility, tax map 12, lot 13.
Before you start, before we go on here,
Yeah,
was there a motion to accept their plan?
no, they're gonna come back with some changes.
And are they gonna put an irrigation system in?
No, they didn't.
Are you gonna require them to put an irrigation system in? If you're not, I'm gonna recommend it to the planning board.
I think that's the planning board's decision. We recommend it,
That's what I was trying to get the
Yeah.
conservation board.
right.
We have been able to keep up with the plans that were required in our current spot. We're an owner occupant, so it's really important to us that this survives and looks well.
I believe you. I've had an awfully hard time with the species of trees being planted in the middle of hot paved areas. And having to make it, they just really struggle for years and years and years. A lot of times, they go 10 years, they don't grow. They bloom, but there's no additional growth, and you don't get the desired outcome without some kind of irrigation.
I guess if irrigation was required later, as occupants, we would absolutely add that.
I put here,
If irrigation was required to keep the plants alive later, we would add that because we need it to look
It's
good.
a little hard later.
Yeah, but I would recommend if you don't put them in, put in the conduits. So that you're not digging up the pavement later.
And it may only mean the plants in the parking lot, on the edge, that might be different, but give it some thought.
Yeah.
We'll see you on Wednesday next week.
And one thing I will add about this discussion, and not to kind of argue against irrigation, I think irrigation would be very valuable. But from a tree survivability standpoint, the number one thing that I see is tree depth. Virtually every tree I see is planted too low. And that's the number one reason why a tree dies. So that is probably the most important thing. Second is probably irrigation.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
did want to talk about that tank system. And my personal feeling on it is, why are we expending energy to try to conserve and make the world better, to put pumps in? And in doing that, it's not that, if those pumps fail, they're in trouble. I don't care how you look at it.
The cost.
And the cost is, yeah, but putting the cost aside, is, I just don't see, it's not something that's green to do, we're trying to do something green, so. That's why I don't do cents worth.
Yes.
The idea of putting the money in irrigation versus in the tank, so much better use of the money for green space.
Why didn't you bring that up, Jim? That was a good trade.
Hey, that's it.
Good point.
All right.
Very good point.
All right, so, New Hampshire DOTs, John, do you know who is here for that?
I don't know. I talked to Jerry on the phone, and I don't know who Jerry is.
Hi, John.
Hello, Jerry. How are you?
How you doing?
I recognize your voice, and that's about it.
I have with me here today Tim Neeson from New Hampshire DOT.
Tim, how do you spell your last name?
N-E-W-S-O-N. No E. And Roger Diane from New Hampshire Administrative Services, Bureau of Public Works.
Yes, DIONNE.
Jerry, what's your last name?
My last name is Fortin, F-O-R-T-I-N.
And Jerry is with Stantec Engineering.
Anyways, welcome, you're very welcome to put the stands inside the tables if you want.
Yeah,
Definitely make it welcome. I do know that a couple of people want to ask you questions, are here from the general public. And, so, I will open that up for them at some point to ask any questions, if there's any concerns, okay?
Jerry, look at this. Let's put the easels over here, and we'll shoot.
You want it behind?
Let's pull this back. And we'll put it right here. That way the camera will catch them.
Okay.
Did you want that? Yeah.
So people can't see them,
I think that this way, everybody will know there.
Okay.
Hopefully that works.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That work for everybody?
Do you see Jane, is it okay?
I'll follow along here.
So, the purpose of this meeting tonight, having a joint meeting with the Conservation Commission, where there were some issues that probably were wetland impacts and other impacts that they're concerned about. So, to make things more time efficient, we decided to try to pull everybody together and try to get through these issues in one night. That's what we're trying to do. John recommended it, and I thought that was a good idea, so did Jane. And so here we are. I think it's a good thing anyways, that we all get together once in a while, just to get to see the faces that we haven't seen in quite a while. Some new faces. So thank you for coming, for this evening. And I guess I would like to start off with, the overall project, what you're planning on doing, and, you know, big picture, and, what you have laid out, and time you want to start construction, all that kind of stuff. Okay? Thank you, Jerry. I assume you're Jerry, right?
Yeah, I'm Jerry, yes.
I'm Dennis.
You wanna?
Yeah.
And can you tell me who you are before you speak, so I wrote your names down, but.
So Sam Newsom from the DOT. So just kind of a bigger. Maybe it doesn't like me.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't.
Does someone have their microphone turned on?
I can speak up a little bit. If you guys still hear me, I can.
That's loud, it's okay.
Okay. Yeah, it was, I heard it too.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
So just for some background of this project, I'm sure you guys are very familiar with the Newington Dover project. 11238 that's been started in, I think, September of 2010. Pretty much going from exit 1 all the way up to the Dover Toll Plaza. So this is one of the lettered projects for that. So we're, wrapping up the Newington Dover project. Pretty much all the work's done minus the S project, which is going to be the General Sullivan Bridge that's still coming out. This is the U project. So this has been in the works since we started design in the early 2000s and been in our plans as part of the expansion of the Dover Newington section. So originally, the maintenance shed's currently located off exit 9 in Dover. Part of this project and the long-term project was that we built a shed up in Rochester to split the maintenance routes, and then the Newington shed, as Jared will get into that, I'm just trying to give some background information. This kind of splits its maintenance route. This is kind of wrapping up towards the end of the project, and then in 2024, 26, ideally, with the draft 10-year plan, we'll be working on the General Sullivan Bridge. So this is kind of one of the last steps in this, very long time standing plan. So I'll give it over to Jared. I just want to give some background on the overall bigger project that has been in our Turnpike Capital project for over 10 years.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, I guess I'll start with an overview and I'll kind of step through the facility into some of the site plan aspects, the utilities to support the site, and talk a little bit about the buildings, and then I guess we could kind of open it up to questions and talk about things. How's that? So the overview is the project site. This is the plan from the overall project Sam was talking about for the improvements to the Spalding Turnpike. The site is located between exit 3 at Woodbury Ave and exit 4 at Nimble Hill Road, and it's the old Newington Drive-In site, the point of reference. So as you look at this plan, the orientation on this plan, this is Nimble Hill Road, exit 4 here, and this side is Woodbury Ave. And this is the Spalding Turnpike across the top. Okay? So it's a highway maintenance garage facility, very similar to the facility that was built up on the Spalding Turnpike in Rochester. So this site has paved access from the drive that accesses Nimble Hill Road. The yellow you see here is the proposed edge of pavement for the site. The site consists of a highway maintenance garage, which is the big building you see here in the center. A bridge maintenance building that's here farther to the west. A salt shed building, which is this building on the north side. A spreader hangar building over here on the south side. It has a fuel island for refueling the trucks here. There's a material storage building. And it will have brine tanks and a generator. So it's essentially set up, it's driven by Rochester and the Spalding Turnpike, it's set up the same way. As I said, it's a paved site here. There's a secondary gravel access drive that's existing, and that connects over to Woodbury Ave. And you can see that right here in the work that's been completed by DOT. There's a paved walking trail component related to this site, which is this purple area here you see in the front. That's a paved 10-foot wide walking trail that goes through the site that connects from the paved access drive on this side to the gravel drive on the south side. Stormwater features for the site, there are 3 detention basins. There's one here right at the front of the site, adjacent to this wetland. The water comes off, it's collected in a small system, passed into the stormwater treatment with extended detention, and treated here before it's discharged into the existing wet area. And there's a new driveway culvert being placed here. There's another detention basin for this side of the site, the high point's about in here. It just picks up stormwater and discharges it into the stormwater system of the Spalding Turnpike. And then there's a larger detention basin at the rear of the site, which catches runoff from the rear of the site that's collected with a big swale along this side that's passed into a sediment forebay, and a swale along this side that's passed into a sediment forebay before discharging to the rear. And on the north side, there's a treatment swale that picks up some sheet flow off the north side of the site. Utilities. The site will be electric service off the utility line that runs along the access drive and be brought into the site from the Nimble Hill roadside.
Jerry, how's it going to be brought in?
It's overhead on the lines now, and it'll be brought into a pole on the site, and it goes underground to connect to the site facility. The sewer service is the town of Newington system. There's a sewer manhole here at the front of the site, and the sewer will connect to that system. We met with the Newington Sewer Department last summer to look at that manhole, inspected it with the guys from the sewer department, and we'll be filing an application to connect to that for the site sewer. Water service is City of Portsmouth. We did a study last summer of the general area. We did some pressure and flow testing with the Portsmouth Water Department, and it was determined that we are going to connect on River Road opposite the site to the east. And I will show you a plan for that connection. For point of reference, the site's here to the left. This is the Spalding Turnpike, and this is River Road here. So the plan is to bring both gas and water. This is all DOT.
Can you turn it a little bit so that
Yeah, no.
you can see it a little better?
Well, people in the audience like to come over here and see what's going on. Just put some chairs behind us. Grab a chair behind. Just say what you see. all right?
Sure, yeah.
If you're not going to use that lectern, just push it back. It's on the mirror. Push it back and then put the easel right back there. That way everyone can see it.
Grab some chairs.
You want to take a chair and put it over on the other side, you can do the same thing.
Here you go.
Lulu, I'm not being here.
That's okay. I'll talk loudly into the microphone.
We good?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Can you see?
Yeah,
So for orientation, again, the site's here on the left-hand side, and that's right at this location here. You can see this access drive and the ramp, they're right here in this plan view. And this is River Road over on the east side. The plan is to bring water and gas over through the DOT property to the east side of the ramp, and then directional drill both the gas and the water service to bring it up into the site at this location. That's the shortest distance. The water pressure is better over there on River Road, and the gas is available from Unitil. Unitil has looked at the plan, and Sam's been doing the coordination with Unitil, so that'll address the water and the gas service. The buildings themselves, as I said, this is the maintenance building, and this is the bridge building. The maintenance building is pretty much a typical highway garage building. It's about 15,000 square feet. It's 186 feet by 80 feet with 11 garage bays, as you can see. There's one wash bay to allow washing of vehicles inside, but it's not an automated wash bay. It's literally just a garage bay that they can manually wash vehicles inside in the wintertime. And it has some office space to support operations on one end of the building.
Sorry, could you say which end of the building? I can't see the orientation.
So this end of the building here, with the office space, is is this end right here. As you come into the site, the office space is on that north side. The
Jerry,
bridge,
as long as we're there, I don't wanna jump all around, but
yeah, sure.
have you given any thought to flipping that building? Because the utilities seem to take an awfully circuitous route around the site. And I don't, you're going all the way around that building to service it with water and gas, then you're going to the back of the bridge maintenance building. Does that make sense?
Well, what, the office is on this end so that the operation of loading the trucks from the salt barn can be observed
Okay.
from the office. So there is some,
There's a reason.
there's a reason that DOT lays the buildings out this way.
Question for you. Would you like interactive questions before you get too deep?
I'm almost through the bridge maintenance building, and that will get us a complete overview of the site, so the bridge maintenance building is this building, as I said. The footprint of that is about 120 by 60. It's about 6,000 feet of building and 1,200 square feet of storage, with an open side for, equipment and stuff that they use in the maintenance of the bridges. That's got 4 garage bays, along with that storage space.
Jerry, just shut that microphone off, we can hear you. Thank you.
We'll yell.
Jesus, that's all.
Yeah, and this is, as you can see, this is the same, looks very similar to the other building, with the garage space, the garage doors. And that kind of gets us through the whole overview of everything.
Jerry, do you wanna just quickly hit, I'm sure it's gonna be asked anyways, just, for ad date and schedule? Or I can.
Yeah, do you want to?
Okay, yeah, so for, so ideally, we're planning on to adding this project, mid-April, and then going through our process for governor and council will take about another 2 months, so it'd be 2.5 months after that before we broke ground. And then we would, have about a year and a half completion date, so completion date ideally would be sometime in 2023, most likely the fall.
Well, yeah, late in the year.
Late fall for 2023. And this, as we're building this facility too, we're also going to be demoing our Dover facility that we are surplusing. So, like I said earlier, the Dover facility is going to be moving down here, so we're relocating all that staff down here to put it in the middle of the kind of maintenance route. Right now, Dover maintains this whole section all the way down to Portsmouth Circle, and it's on the very northern end. So response time if something happens or we need to get out there to the salt near the south of the Spalding is longer, and that's why we're trying to get a centralized location on the whole route of the maintenance strip.
This is something that I'd like to take some time with.
Sure.
And I have a number of issues. Let's start off with the last, which was a quote that I heard last weekend. And that was, why are we, as a small town and the state, being smashed again, and again? And I'll tell you what those are, by the state. Why? Because we're so small. Now I'll take you through the 4 agains. First again, P's. More than X% of our town, I think it was 40 to 60% of our town was taken by the state or by the government to make the base. Now, the second again, the highway completely reconfigured our industrial zone so that anyone on the front end, Walmart, any of those things, to get to them, not convenient. Third again was the water line, which is now starting to blow up, and it should blow up. Nothing is being done on Durham, nothing, 0. 100% of the damage is all being done on Fox Point and all through this town. And this town doesn't have a concept of how bad it is until someone from town went to a Department of Public Works meeting. There's a link that shows what's going to happen, and it's devastating. I know the DES is involved. They've already increased the cost by $1 million, and it's going to get worse because the Conservation Law Foundation is now looking at it as well. There's no protections for this town under what's going on. That's the third again. So now we'll go to the water line, and then nothing in Durham, and then I'm going to quote you now, which is even more upsetting. Dover's being shut down, and you're moving Dover to Portsmouth, or to Newington rather. The last again is you're destroying the last asset that we have for another purpose that we have segregated in our master plan. I do not know what you have done politically with this town or with the state, but I do not believe that this is so unacceptable to me, it's not funny. You have Portsmouth, you have Pease, you have Dover, you have Durham, yet you come to a town that has less than 450 resident homes, and you destroy the only asset that we have left, and you take it, no taxes. To me, this is beyond unacceptable. So could you explain why this site was picked? Smallest town, least amount of power, and you're coming here and you're destroying it. Second, please take a look at the percentage taken in the past of all of our towns. You're coming here again and taking from again. I want to know why and who approved this. And if right now, if it's been approved by the governor, by the state, by the selectmen, I have no idea. I would like explanations tonight. Pease, state owned. We do not get a penny from that. That was all land taken from this town. Are we gonna get a penny from this? No. You're gonna destroy it, make it look horrible along our viewscape. You are destroying the viewscape of our small town so that your highway department can service everybody else in a convenient location. When I know there's land on Pease that you can do, but you don't wanna fight the state. Or there's other land in Portsmouth that you could potentially take, but you don't wanna spend the money, or you don't wanna do the time. I would like to understand why here. It's more like I keep having question after question of why does our town keep getting destroyed? And then why not, I did that one, we are small, I think that's it. It's enough, it's pretty strong. So I would love to give you the opportunity to try to help us understand all the isms as to why we're here today and why you chose the only place in Newington after we've been destroyed by the state again, again, and again. The water line was the last one. And then when
Jim, let's let him answer the question. You're going over the same thing, so let him answer that question.
Please.
If he has an answer. So Jerry, do you have an answer to those questions, why this site was taken?
Do you want to take that question, sir?
So, this was, like I said, this was a long time ago. This wasn't a recent decision. This was when this project was being designed back in the, mid to early 2000s as part of this whole build out for Newington Dover. So it wasn't a recent thing. The part of this land was part of the old turnpike when it was realigned. So literally the access road that we're using used to be the state's right of way anyways. That was the old Spalding Turnpike before it got realigned.
Okay.
Through
Do you mind if I interrupt?
Jim, let's let him answer.
No,
That's a lot of
Dennis,
questions.
please allow me to speak.
Jim,
Dennis,
Jim, I'm
please.
the chairman of the board.
I know.
I'm gonna ask them to answer the question when you ask a question. He's trying to answer, you let him answer.
But I need to ask him if he wants interaction as he answers, if he's want the floor until you're the end and I take notes.
Jim, I would like for him to answer the question.
Done.
So like I said, this goes back many years ago. I believe even in the 2019 plan that's on the city website shows this as our proposed shed. So it's been there for a long time. It's nothing new. And this was just part of the whole thing that they look at when we do a major project like this. It comes down to access to the highway for a speedy response for maintenance, to keep the road safe. We got north and southbound access here. It's right on the highway, and part of it was our existing land anyways. It comes down to also looking at sites for wetland impacts, for anything else that comes into that as well. So this isn't something that we've started this project. I don't know, Jerry, probably like 2 or 3 years ago, but again, this
The
was
plan
part of
started 10 to 15
this was
years
part of
ago.
the 10-year plan back in 2005 for the state plan, and it was a part of the 10-year plan. The 10-year plan's approved by the governor, whoever the governor was at that time. So this all gets vetted out through both our executive office. It goes up through the state, and then it goes, eventually to the governor's 10-year plan too. So I can't give you a lot of background information in 2005 or 2006, whenever, early 2000s when this originally went to all the public hearings, all the town meetings and everything like that, because I wasn't at the state at that time, so that's before my time.
Okay, Jim, do you have another question?
I most certainly do. Let's go back to what you were talking about at the very beginning, if you remember. You said in 2019, this thing was planned, it was on the website in 2005. Have you ever come before the town of Newington and ever presented this plan to the planning board or to any of the selectmen? This plan here that I'm looking at right now, because this is new to everyone that I've talked with. You're saying 2005. I
So-
may be the only one in this room, you all may know about this, and I stand corrected. But every person I've talked to, when I mention this, they're like, what?
Yeah,
And
that-
so I'd like to know who from the state, who from the town, and who from the federal, names. And if you don't have them now, please provide them.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to
I
you.
understand, totally understand.
But this has been part of the public hearing plan, if you,
How do you come to this town? That was the question.
That was part of the road plan, but that was the
Yeah.
plan for the Spalding Turnpike.
correct,
The
and,
plan you see here is the plan from the Spalding Turnpike, okay? The only thing we did is highlight the site.
That site is a huge part of our town. That's why I'm overlooking it like it's a little dot.
So this construction you see on this plan, this was the public hearing plan from the Spalding Turnpike.
Please answer my question. Did you ever meet with any of the town officials from Newington or the planning board since 2005 to talk about taking and doing that plan? Have you ever spoken with anyone in this town?
Can I just say something?
Please.
We're here to talk about this project. I know you have bigger questions. This is out of our knowledge tonight.
That's great.
You know, the commissioner of DOT, and all these other people that were involved with this way back before we ever were, would have to speak to that. So I don't wanna waste your time and.
No, your
if
answer
we wanna
is
get
perfect.
to this tonight, if we could just talk about this project.
What I would like to do though, however, is walk away with you coming back with answers. Because I do not find it acceptable for you to say it's back in time and we don't know.
Jim, I think there's someone on the planning board who has answers to that question. I think Chris, he was on the development for the Spalding Turnpike as one of the road, Commissioner Chris?
Advisory.
Advisory board, okay. And there were public hearing on the Spalding Turnpike. I did not know it included this site.
Chris,
What I understand was this site was going to be established for a laydown area and then it was going to be later sold. That was my understanding of what was going to happen.
If you will check with the original project lead, Chris Watschek, who I believe is deputy commissioner.
yeah, he's since, retired, but yep,
Yeah.
he was, yep.
The drive-in theater was purchased or leased as a laydown area in 2005. And for 3 years, it was simply a lease for a laydown area. It was not until 2009, the state made a statement that they had planned to put a building facility there. So to say that this has been known since 2005 does not match what the town of Newington was told. Perhaps there was decisions within the DOT, but it was closely guarded. And it wasn't until 2009 that there was an official announcement. By then it was in the actual bidding process on it. So I'd ask you to check with Chris or his notes that indeed there was no public announcement that this was going to be a main facility until 2009.
Okay, yeah, and what I was saying is that this whole project, not just this shed, was a part of the whole, the whole build out for here. So yes, you're 100%, it probably evolves, but I'm just saying that the planning for the original of this project has been, in early to mid 2000s to start to build out the whole Newington, not necessarily the shed in 2005.
And it was an evolutionary process. There were
Yep.
many different designs, many movements of lanes, as you know, but the permanent taking of this particular site was not announced until 2009, and then it was done unilaterally.
Okay, I just gotta get us refocused on the technical merits of it, and then there's other stuff, Jim, I get it, and I have something I'm gonna present to you later on that was sent to your commissioner. And I'm not sure if you received it or not. It's gonna be a position in our town concerning the use of this, and I'm gonna get into that a little bit later. First, I wanna talk about any technical merits that we have to talk about, and there's a cemetery out there.
Yep.
And I know there's someone here who wants to ask some questions on that, but there's some other questions that we probably already, that other people have, and I'd like to make sure we get those covered. And then I know you're here, you're looking at the design, you want comments about the design, that's what I'm trying to get us refocused on. But then when you walk away, I wanna make sure you understand some of the frustration, I think that you already sensed tonight, and rightfully so, it's not, you're not the guys that's at fault, it's the overall state of New Hampshire is doing this. So, I'd like to get us refocused on that, if anyone has any technical questions, I do have a very, just 3 or 4 myself.
Okay.
All right, so I'm not at the board members first, if, Chris, you have to cut that in half.
Can I speak for quick?
Yeah, what's that?
I was just gonna say, if Lou has a quick comment, maybe it makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine, I actually
Yeah.
was going to.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Unless you wanna stay until midnight.
No, I don't. I'm with the HDC, and we've spent quite a lot of time in the Section 106 process on the original proposal, as well as the General Sullivan Bridge proposal. So the first question I'd ask is, I've never seen this Plan U, or whatever Phase U that you have. Have you been interacting with the Division of Historic Resources about this plan? And if you have, what have their comments been? Because that's something that we definitely want to be involved in.
We've just started the permitting process. We just filed the wetlands permit and the AOT permit as part of that whole process, so,
We did talk to the Division of Historical Resources.
I'm sorry, I
Okay,
couldn't
and-
hear you, sir.
I said we did speak with them, we did file a request for project review with them.
Have they reviewed it yet?
Correct, they have reviewed it, they noted that there's a cemetery, I know, Jerry, I don't know if you have it on
yeah,
that plan.
it's right on the plan, it's right here.
And the only comment they had,
And we
as
show
we
a
got back,
25-foot buffer around it, and we're 150 feet from that part of the
the
site.
only
Okay.
comment we got back was to stay away from the cemetery, create this buffer zone, 25 feet around it, so it's way off the side of the property.
So that's one of the things I have, yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, can you see it?
Right here,
Yeah, it's right there. That's the buffer, and the cemetery is that smaller.
So one of the questions I have about that is we're concerned with vandalism on some of these old cemeteries, especially the ones that have been in the mall. So is there a way to work with DOT to help monitor that cemetery, to help maintain it? Because I assume this is a public walkway, this purple stripe, is that public? So anybody's going to now be able to access this area from Nimble Hill or Woodbury Ave. So one of our concerns is the vandalism of the cemetery. The next one, and I'm not an engineer, but it looks to me that all of the water is going to be caught in the swale. So there's not going to be any more water directed down towards that cemetery?
Correct.
Okay. The 25-foot buffer, we'd like to work with you to have that not filled with poison ivy or with crap or whatever that would be there, but to have it maintained. Is that something that you'd help us do to help maintain that area?
We don't need to even touch that area. As I said, we're
I know you don't
150
need to
feet
touch
from
it.
She's talking the future.
I'm
whether you would
asking,
Help them
That's your call, Sam.
access to the cemetery,
Do
say,
you know if because I know there's a lot of wet area over there, but that's all, I'm not looking at elevation.
pretty thickly
That's
grown.
all.
That's on the height of land
Yeah.
there,
Yeah,
so
that's-
it's high and
That's
dry.
almost at the top of the
I'm
little
sure
hill.
I can take that back to my administrator as a request for something that we maintain. We normally maintain, most of our sites anyway, we spend a lot of time mowing and trimming and everything else, so I'm sure we can take that back. I don't think that would be a big deal. To speak to the security side of things, for the access road, as you stated, it will have that public access, but there's going to be a fuel station here, which we have at most of our DOT sheds, and state police fills up there. So we tend not to have a lot of vandalism at our facilities just because there's a pretty high state police presence normally. Also, other local municipalities will have fobs to fill up there as well normally. So there's a pretty normally high traffic through there, where there's a lot of eyes, and we have had issues with people dumping fridges there and things like that. So we have discussed in-house to do security cameras on the building, which would, hopefully help with that too.
So then the question would be, you don't have a security man patrolling the property. But
No.
what we're asking for going forward, I don't want to trespass on your property all of the time to get down there to check the cemetery. But if you're right there, or if you have the cameras right there, will you work with us to maintain it and prevent any vandalism of that spot?
Yeah, I can take that back to my administrator and get back to you, but I don't see that as a big issue.
Can
So
I
the
just
last-
ask a question with you,
Yeah.
Lulu? Do you want like a dedicated path out there so that you're not tromping through the woods?
You
and
know,
that-
I was thinking about that, but with the public access, I'm afraid it would become an attractive nuisance to walk down if you
But-
give
but
them a
the same token,
path.
it allows
Yeah.
the residents of Newington access to it.
To
It's up to you,
access.
obviously.
Um,
That's a state law, you have to have access to that cemetery.
You do.
Path.
He's talking about a cleared
They all have
path.
access to the property, they don't have to
Yeah.
go in the path. But where are they gonna access it? They can walk anywhere, they can walk through the property itself.
And that was my point, is
You
that
really gotta, you gotta
to create
specify
a-
where the access is, and they've got a lot of wetlands around, you're not gonna have access to the wetlands.
The only, when you go to an abandoned cemetery, the rules are you're supposed to contact the property owner for permission to be able to go out to the abandoned cemetery. I don't think you're supposed to just go out anytime you want and walk around to check it out.
Lulu, what the law says is that the public has a right to access private property even to get to a cemetery.
That is true.
That's the law.
Our family has a plot right on Shattuck Way, and we can go there anytime we want, and it's
Okay.
on, doesn't make a difference, General Weston or Weston Electric, whatever. It's the Dow Cemetery, we can walk on private land to go there whenever time we want.
Personally, I
Okay.
would call the landowner and ask for permission, but then if it was absolutely refused, I would basically be saying, all right, I need to go, but I have a right to do so. That's what the law allows.
So I'll leave it up to you guys about whether you want a real path to the cemetery
Well,
or
you're
not.
saying no probably because it would only point out that there's,
I kind of think it would be, I'm concerned, we've had a lot of stones that get vandalized, especially in the cemetery between the two malls. And I'm just concerned that if we get more people down around there, that could just be something that happens.
And I haven't been out to site for a while, but that's pretty wooded going
It
back.
is wooded.
Yeah, so I don't think it's super visible, which is probably a good thing for security from that path.
You'd be surprised how many people come down right behind your property where that, when the DOT fixed up the flagstone ditch through there. And you can go down, you can take bicycles and walk, so there are quite a few people that come down. And I guess the last question I had is relative, I don't see it on these maps, where any of the existing stone walls are. Because presumably the whole property had a stone wall perimeter around it at some point, because those are, again, something that we're trying to preserve, rather than have them, you know, bulldozed and buried under parking lots.
Yep.
So do you have, has anybody looked at those? Okay.
again, just to reiterate, there's state laws that basically say that you cannot take down a stone wall with their property, on the property line as a divider. So if you're doing that, don't. The answer, DHS will be on your case.
And I mean,
We're actually, this is probably the closest we are to a side property line, and we're probably a good 20 feet
That's
from
fine,
that
it was
sideline.
just I think I know,
General,
I used to go to the
yep.
theater when it was a drive-in theater, I mean, that was a
Yeah.
long time ago.
That's a barbed wire fence, Jerry, is that on top of a stone wall or not?
I'm sorry, what was
Oh, I was talking to Jerry, the northern, the one you were just pointing out, Jerry, you call it as a barbed wire fence, so I'm
Yeah,
assuming that's not a stone wall too, is
That's
it?
the property line, I don't remember if that one is, but I was just pointing out that we're about.
Yeah, no,
That's the
yeah.
closest point to,
Yeah.
we are to any property.
I
line.
agree, yeah.
So again, my experience with stone walls is you kind of have to take pictures of what exists there before a project starts. Because once you're in the middle of a project and someone says there was no stone wall there, you know, it's gone, and you can't do anything about it. But those were my only,
Yeah, I think Lulu, I think what they're looking at, and what's out there right now is the site that they're gonna build on is what has already been laid out with gravel.
Correct.
They're not expanding that. That's
Yeah.
as far
Yeah,
as
it's
they're
not
going.
changing much, when there was a laydown area.
but
So
these
we
are
know what every
things keep
stone
in
is on
mind
that-
going
We know what every
forward.
stone is in that property and that, on every single wall. You don't wanna go up there and touch one. Chris, you had a question? Now, looking this way too, someone, I don't need to ignore anybody, so Bob, no questions, then I'll get to, try and give everybody a chance to speak. So, go ahead.
Lulu, this is more for you, and I have
You're not listening. Hey, Lulu, Chris has a question for you, point.
some information from you and for you and some questions before you leave, please. Okay, and that is, I walked this site as a member of the advisory task force back in the 2000. There are no stone walls surrounding this particular property. I walked through marshes and everything. There is barbed wire fence along the straight port rail line access on the south side, and that's shown on the plan. There are no stone walls in the front. There are were not stone walls in the back, although at this point they would have been covered over by the Spalding, by the Woodbury Avenue turnaround that was built, and it's about 20 feet high, and the spread is about 200 feet, covering anything that was down there along the turnpike. So from the site, I found no evidence of stone walls back in 2005 when I walked out with Chris Wachta.
So I think in this case, since it sounds like this is a new part of the highway plan that's being built out, that should be confirmed on some kind of a site map plan for what they're doing now. Because when I look at what we have today, there's no indication what the boundaries are of the property. And, I mean, you could be absolutely true, because I have not walked, I wouldn't even know where the boundaries are right now.
So it is the original town boundaries for the, from the town plot, from the Butler property, and who purchased it from whoever owned the theater. And to that end, I think the questions I have for you and the cemetery committee, I assume Peggy asked you to come, and that is, first of all, the DHS did evaluate the entire site for, from Little Bay all the way down to Gosling Road for historic properties. This cemetery and all the other ones are identified, as well as all the historic houses, and you've seen those reports that came down in the 2000s. I'm sure as you've done the research on the Dennis Golden Bridge. I think the questions that this group has for you is, do you want the, not only do you want the 25-foot buffer site fenced? Okay, do you want them to take away all the vegetation and refurbish it? And do you want a sidewalk access? What do you want what does cemetery come on?
You need to, I mean, the way I approached that was to say we want to work with you on the cemetery. Do we need to decide everything tonight that needs to be done, or can this be a process over the next couple of months?
I think it's worthwhile being specific. I was offering these as suggestions you could ask the planning board to ask for. And would you like to discuss and look at the site first and discuss it with them? That for sure is there, but those are the things that I think you might consider asking and determining whether they would what. Because that's the kind of activity they need to do. What do we need to do for this site for the,
So the first part of your question, I'm very familiar with all of the environmental impact studies that you've had to do going all the way back to 2007. But when at the very end of a 20-year proposal, a brand new set of buildings and site plan comes up, I don't think DHS had ever looked at this And that's why I asked you, had you discussed this plan with them? And what was their feedback? So I'm comfortable in that regard, because the thing that we're concerned mostly about is the abandoned cemetery, and the stone walls. So, whatever that, your process up to this date in section 106 and all of that, I am comfortable with. The second part of what you're saying is, my understanding is they're going to go back and see if they can help maintain the cemetery, which would be both from a security protection point of view, as well as whatever needs to be done physically, mowing or getting rid of poison ivy. I don't favor a path directly to it, because I think it would be like a big road map, go there. If there were any stones in the vicinity, these old New England stones are very hard to come by, and it costs a fortune if you have to buy them. So as you're doing any work, if you uncover any of those, putting them along that 25-foot perimeter would make a lot of sense. But since this is kind of like Mount Baldy already, that was a drive-in theater and now it's in a lay-down area, I'm not sure they're going to find anything
I can almost
else.
guarantee that, because not only was the drive-in theater that was leveled and material
Chris,
put out.
let's just go ahead, they answered the question, they would put their permits in, we get
Is that okay that we?
DHR.
Oh,
Yeah. So, just be careful with the stone walls, get back to the map, if there's any stone walls that are being affected, I think she was asking for that. So I wanna move ahead, but, Chris, you asked a question, you have more, I have some others who wanna ask a question. Are you sure?
I'll come back.
All right, thank you. Bob?
Jerry, I want to go back to something you said initially about the drainage basin on the, I think it's the east side. So the wash bay, when they wash the trucks down, is that going to run out into that basin?
No, that is an internal drain system that goes to the sewer system.
Okay. So how much water is actually coming off this site? Because you made a comment that it would go into the existing Spalding system?
It actually goes in three different directions. This comes across here, and the treatment flow here, this comes down, there's a 15-inch pipe that goes back to the Spalding. It's unclear if some of it maybe comes around in the wetland complex. We have no increase in runoff here. We have no increase in runoff at any of the points leaving our drainage treatment facilities. It's all mitigated to existing per the state requirements. The other discharge point is here. This goes into a drain system right here that's collected by the Spalding. This back here discharges to the big wetland to the rear that gets down to the ditch improvements that.
Do you know where all that water goes to from the Spalding system?
This here,
Because we do.
this drain system along here.
Yeah, because we do, because there's a failure over on Shattuck. And if you're gonna add to it by putting more water into that Spalding system, then we have a concern with that.
That's why I said, we have mitigated all the peak flows at each of the discharge points to the existing condition. And we looked at the existing condition as a meadow and wooded combination to represent a natural condition prior to the drive-in theater site. So that's the comparison we made for pre versus post development.
Can I add to that? We do have extreme concern. So Shattuck Way, which is down gradient in the Spalding, has been a source of flooding, and it seems to have occurred shortly after the Spalding construction.
Why don't you go point it out on the map, just so Jerry knows, because it's on the other side.
It's on the other side, yeah, in that area.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Okay.
So that area has been a source of flooding since the Spalding has been rehabbed, and the town has expressed to DOT that we have concerns with that runoff. And what I've heard you say is that you're matching the peak rate of runoff. And so with all this impervious and the soils are not good out there, what I'm presuming you're doing is actually increasing the volume.
Yes.
So what you may be also doing is actually making the situation much worse, because as you detain the runoff, you are delaying the peak rate, which actually may coincide with the peak rate of the overall watershed, in that you could be making the situation down gradient significantly worse. And so,
I would have to take, I don't believe that can occur on drainage basins of this size.
do you,
This discharge pipe is a 15-inch pipe, this is a 12-inch pipe, so
have you seen the overall watershed and the
you're
fact that
talking
we
a
have
huge
problems?
area, you're talking
Yes.
a huge area by comparison now, and we're talking a very, very small areas where, you're talking 1, 2 CFS.
But if you're taking, that 1 or 2 CFS can make all
But
the
that's
difference.
being mitigated to the, as I said, the pre-development condition as a natural meadow wooded area.
But you're drawing it out further. The town should be seeing the drainage calculation, and those calculations should really be looking at the overall
We
watershed.
have them with the AOT application up there.
Wetlands, that's all we have.
You have the wet, we dropped off to
Yeah.
John the AOT application with all the drainage
So-
calculations.
Great.
The Board of Selectmen is very concerned. They've been working with DOT for the previous work, and they remain concerned. They'll be very concerned over this as
Okay.
well.
Duly noted, yeah.
Do you know who you're working with for the DOT side of things for that?
Oh God, who was the previous project manager?
Was it Keith Coda?
Keith retired, right?
Yeah.
And then who was on site for the most part?
Was it Adam?
Adam
Chestnut?
Chestnut. Yeah,
Okay.
so Adam's gonna contact the Marathon.
Okay. Yep, yeah, he's on it.
And I know that Bill, has been on some of the email chain as well.
Bill Cass?
Yeah.
Okay.
Russ, you all set?
No, I'm just scratching my head.
Thank you.
I'm a consultant to the town, I'm not.
No, it's good, just to follow up too. Thank you.
James has a question too?
So in your wash bag, are you gonna have a fuel separator in there?
Yeah, there's an oil and gas separator that's located, just outside, for next to the sewer.
Wash bag.
Right outside the wash bay.
I just wanna,
He asked my question.
I gotta add, the wash bay is not definite, we're gonna get a price for it, if we can afford it, we're gonna do it, but there's a cut in the bill, and if we're not gonna do it, it won't be there, so.
Okay, so I had a question on that specifically, as far as the oil water separator, before I can see what you have here is a separation, basically tank or manhole. It's not a true oil water separator. With monitors in it, making sure that when it gets filled, that an alarm goes off and lets you know, from what I can see on your plans. I had to put in oil water separators for the exact same watershed on a building, or a project I had to work on in Newington, as an engineer. So what is it that you're putting there? Because to me, that thing can easily become overcome with oils and other debris that goes into that, and nobody knows the difference. It just goes on and on and on, and no one's checking it. So what is it you're doing for monitoring that separator? And what you called it was
Oil grease trap.
grease trap. And that's an old style 1950s grease trap. Nice. And basically, I see, and that would never fly today. So I guess what is it why you're doing that, not putting in a modern day oil water separator with all the monitoring that goes on with it?
Well, this is a highway maintenance garage, so DOT does have procedures, their own maintenance type procedures that they follow for all their state highway garages. We can certainly take that under advisement, Sam, and look at
So I had
putting in
to,
something more high-tech if that's,
so I had to, as a federal agency working with this, we were required to do this for the same exact use that you're talking about. So I wanna know what kind of waiver you got for doing that. I think, it's just something I think you need to do, because I know how these facilities work. After they filled up, they just keep going. If there's no alarm, no one's sitting there saying, hey, some noise going off, I gotta check something. It's just gonna go unimpeded, and then it goes right into the septic system, and then the town has to deal with it at the sewer treatment plant. And that's not what we wanna do. I mean, you got a free hookup here, there's no cost per sewer, all you gotta do is hook it up. So I what I think at least you can do is try to keep our costs down for your dirt, the stuff that's gonna be going, your grease is gonna be going into the sewer system.
Yeah.
Okay, because the last thing we wanna do is have poor quality stuff going into the line that basically goes against how we treat sewage.
Right.
All right, and Rick, am I getting this right?
Yes, you are, so I asked.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, we don't have the detail here, so I can't comment.
You do have a detail, actually.
Yeah, I don't see it, but
He's got the site that was submitted.
I believe what you're saying, I'm just,
All you do is you have, like a septic tank, you have pipes going down into the bottom, you're pulling from the bottom, the oil's flow to the top.
Correct.
That's all it is.
Right.
There's nothing real fancy about that.
We'll relook at it.
Okay. Who had another question? Jane was.
I also have a concern of the salt that they're gonna be rinsing off
Yes.
for the septic.
Oh,
for the sewage
you know, a lot of
treatment.
stuff that comes off of those trucks, when they come off the road, they're salting, and I assume you're gonna be washing those salters down and putting them away, am I correct? In your wash base, and you put them away when you go to hang them for the winter, for the summer?
Yeah, they get washed off and then.
So I'm not sure how salt is going to interact with the sewer treatment that we have in our plant. We have a very expensive plant, we just updated it, we're still paying for it. And the last thing we wanna do is introduce something that is gonna create, some big expenses for the town, because all you gotta do is just pay by the gallon. And basically, say, if you don't do it right, you say, not our problem, it's Newington's problem. So I'm bringing it up to you now, because we need to have some answers, because the last thing we wanna do is, like I said, is destroy our sewage treatment plant or process. Who is next? Jim?
There's three specific questions that I'd like to ask. The first actually is the Conservation Commission. I want to point something out. There we go. Yeah, right there. Always finding the right angle. What do you worry about it? Along Shattuck Way, I'd like, if everyone can turn to page C105. That is the vegetation and landscape plan that the state is now putting before the town of New England. I'd like you to notice that there are, I'll read them. We have permanent pools, we have basin meadow seed, and we have riprap, okay? There is nothing else listed. So the first question I have is there anything that I'm missing, and are you missing all the trees that I would think you would want to line along the highway so we don't see this? The Conservation Commission can make a determination of what's needed, but there is nothing in front of your building. There's no landscaping. There is not anything but seed and riprap. So is there something that's not on the plan that should be?
No, those are water quality basins, so we would normally not plant trees.
I'm talking along, I wish I could do it, along the highway, the viewscape. You've taken our viewscape and you're now gonna put all those buildings all over it.
That's,
So now,
this is within the right of way of the turnpike.
I'm not talking about the right of way, I'm asking a question specifically. Do you have any trees planning to go along the highway so that we do not see that, so that you properly landscape it, so the viewscape of our town does not be destroyed?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you very much. Does the conservation, that was gonna ask the Conservation Commission if you wanted to have input on that or any direction that you'd like to put forward so that the town on the recorded video can hear it.
Yes, it would be nice to have some type of vegetation to break up the multiple buildings that you're putting up. We require landscaping for every project in this town to try to maintain our view.
So all you're actually showing are the trees that you cut down to put in this property.
So what I was basically saying is, Jane actually brought up the proper statement, which is the Conservation Commission reviews both anything that comes before their board to review the landscaping plan and a 2-year plan of how they're gonna do it. Yours, please don't take this wrong, what you're doing inside of your world is not something that anyone wants to see. So I think that if, and I'm gonna use the word if, this continues to proceed, so I don't know if it can be stopped. But if it does continue to proceed, the minimum I think the conservation plan should be asking for is a complete tree lining of that entire road for the entire section that you're taking so that it will grow. We're already already be at a growth rate, so at least it's semi-impacting, not completely, and giving it 5 years plus, and it will cover it. And that is the investment that the state should be making if they're gonna be doing this. And this is the beginning of that. So we talked about, okay, the third point was something that you had actually said. I would love to choose my own baseline. I would love to say that my property is here, when it's really here. You're choosing what you define as baseline. A baseline is defined by what the laws state. The state is now saying, I'm gonna choose what I think is the pre-existing condition, and I'm gonna go back to the old movie theater. Well, why don't you go back 100 years? Why don't you go back to yesterday? You're choosing your own baseline, and then you're making all of your measurements off that baseline. When we have a water scientist that the town has hired, that is in complete contradiction to what you stated. And our town water scientist looks at every single condition, every single building, every watershed. You said you put forward a plan. I will say that in a nice way, it has to be revisited, because our soil scientists, our specialists are saying, no, what you are saying is incorrect. You are going to increase the flow into our water system, into our sewer system, into the highway, into wherever it's going to go. And it's not a decrease. So it will cause an issue to failure. Did you see a Shattuck Way to failure? Yeah. It will cause an increase to Shattuck Way's already problematic problem. So that, to me, you dismissed based on your decision to make a baseline that I don't think you have the right to make.
So, I think it's time for me to give you guys, for those of you who haven't been around long enough, and I wish maybe Jerry should have started out by saying this, but neither the planning board or the conservation commission has any authority over this project at all. You can make recommendations. I'm hoping the DOT and Jerry listens to what you're saying and will take it under, either take it into consideration. But the state of New Hampshire is exempted from all local regulations. So the site plan review regulations, the landscaping regulations, nothing applies to this project. That's not to suggest in any way that when Jane or Jim says, gee, it'd be nice to see some street trees to break up the front of the building for the Spalding Turnpike, I would hope that you would take that, back and say, let's make an effort to create a wooded buffer between the Spalding. And then Jim, to your point, they are not exempt from state permits. So they have to get a wetlands permit, they have to get an AOT permit. So those will be reviewed and approved by the state. I'm assuming you don't have to pay the fees, but the review is, but the review is as rigorous, I'm assuming, as it is for any other project. So it's a unique thing in New Hampshire, but that's the way it is. So I think what we needed to try, the reason I'm saying this is that I think we need to try to find a way to, ask or encourage the DOT and Jerry to help us. Yes, thank you.
No, I was just gonna say just about what you just said, not kidding, I'm not reiterating.
Yeah.
They're here to basically present to us anything that is, but they do not have to follow our regulations or the things that we want. It's voluntary only, and unless it's something we point out that they missed, it's a state law, or something that really seems to make sense that we need to pay attention to, like the cemetery was a good thing, stone walls was a good thing. But these other things it really does make a difference to us, and you're gonna be our neighbor for a long, long time. I don't see you going away. All right, I just don't. So, so I think if you wanna start off on the right foot, I think that's probably the good thing, and I think for very little extra money, you can probably meet some of these requirements, not requirements, but ask, if that's the right word, to try to accomplish and make our town a nice town to live in. And you're gonna be working here, you're gonna be doing an awful lot, and I think it's probably important for you to wanna maintain that good relationship with us as well. So I think that's probably something I think that we all need to take a look at. Derek, you had a question?
Yeah, I always had questions about hazardous chemicals and materials. What could be transported to this site, and what could be stored on the site, and are there storage facilities for them? And I actually want to go to the drain issue. We have berms around some of these places that have drains in them. Where do they go to? Can they be isolated if there's a spill? Can they be controlled and cleaned up if there's a spill? So it's a broad question, but that's what we're interested in.
As I said, there's a material storage building for the type of chemicals that they use.
And it would be it's used oil from doing, just, lawnmower change, something like that in the garage. We don't store any other chemicals there, in bulk. What?
No fertilizers, insecticides?
Like, we have them, they're within the shed, small amounts, but we don't know, like 55-gallon tubs or anything like, drums of that. We don't normally store that stuff in there just because of the use of the occupancy of the building.
But you change oil and stuff there, or where's that happen?
Not for the vehicles. Yeah, the vehicles go through our mechanical service division, so they go to satellite garages that are dedicated for that. They may change like a lawnmower, engine oil type thing there, and then it goes into the used oil drum, and that's pretty much the only thing that gets stored in the hazmat building, unless it's something we find on the highway that then, gets handled, through our hazmat contract.
So this is really, there's no truck maintenance going on here.
No.
It's really truck storage and
Correct.
if you get lucky, you'll have a wash bay.
Working on
Keeps
snowplows
them out of the
and
weather.
stuff.
Right,
Yep.
okay, fair enough.
So I'm still concerned about the drain going down to the sewage plant. Are there any other drains that go to the sewage system?
Are you talking about the sewer system?
What I'm looking for is particularly oil or something that's leaking, diesel fuel may be leaking, brake fluid may be leaking, get into the bay where you're cleaning up and you start going down the drain. The big spill, you need to have a monitor, I think you need to monitor your system and you need the ability to isolate it, so.
Right, so this building, there are two oil and water separators, that's what we were talking about, that you commented on. There aren't any floor drains for the bridge building, it's not that type of operation, so it's only this building here.
What does the bridge, maintenance, there's two buildings they call bridge maintenance, am I correct?
No, this is a slab with it's a concrete slab, so if they use, take elements that steel from bridge construction, it's on that instead of putting it on.
What's in the
some
building
paper.
itself besides the slab?
This is the building itself,
Yeah, what is that?
that's the bridge maintenance.
No, he said, what do you
What's
put
in
in?
it?
Oh, it has 5 bays so that they can bring stuff inside and work inside of it. Bridge-related things like steel items.
Do you do welding in there, or fabrication and things, that type of
They have some welding so they can do repairs and things like that.
painting?
And then this is an exterior slab.
Yeah, no painting.
I think they paint
yeah.
bridges in place.
So before you put it up, you usually put some kind of primer.
No, we don't do that.
I'm just trying to understand what you're doing, that's.
So, yeah, the maintenance facility is almost like, the bridge maintenance facility is like a satellite garage for us. So they use it as, for that particular crew, as like a home base. So they'll go in, use a computer, check a couple email, payroll, things like that, fix something on the truck, and, get tools they need, things like that, and go to the pad out there to get material and then go back out to site. Most of the time, those crews are, in a trailer, on site working for a bridge for weeks at a time, doing joint work or, any bridge cleaning, anything like that. So during the winter, they're pretty much not there. During the summer, they're there sporadically because they work in the field the majority of their day.
So if you don't have the wash bay,
Wait.
how are you cleaning the equipment
In the wash bin.
if they don't
Well,
build
don't
one?
have.
Oh, if we don't build the wash bay, yeah, they would normally clean it outside.
So you'd be spraying off the vehicles, and so all that salt would be going out into the environment.
Could be grease, oil, anything that's on it.
So, I don't know how this board can react, but I would encourage them to spend that money to do that inside where it's contained.
I wanna make sure you capture that point that Eric first talked about, because if you are gonna have it out there, you're just basically washing and letting it go into the storm drain, on the side of your pavement. And that basically just goes downstream to everybody else in Newington. There's gotta be some kind of containment with that. I know I would never have been allowed to do that in my former job with that kind of facility. It was just absolutely not allowed. And we're talking about in Newington, so I don't understand how you can just say we're just gonna do that.
throughout the state? Are they all the same?
Probably a little bit different size, but they pretty much have all the same facilities.
So the real question I have is that, is it a possibility in the future that there's a upgrade to this that allows other activities to go on here than we're talking about today?
No, I would say no. Because of how the crews and bureaus works, they're kind of stuck doing their job. The site's not gonna be big enough to really build out for anything else. We had talked about having other bureaus there. It did not work. The site really wasn't big enough. You get into more wetland impacts and everything else, so it's just specifically gonna be used for Bureau of Turnpikes in that bridge maintenance building, which also is our crew. So, change of use, I do not see happen.
Thank you for that question. That was actually what I like to call unintended consequences.
I have a question right here.
So I actually have several different questions. I guess I want to start with the proposed walking trail. I guess I walk to and from my house here to my place of work. And I don't find walking along this area terribly attractive. So I guess I would like you to consider, if you're gonna put in a walking trail, how do you make it look nice and inviting to pedestrians? That this site and maybe further down the access road. I've never considered walking this way from.
Can I answer that question? This goes back from, I'm gonna try to answer that, I have a little history on that. And Chris was there with me, there was a public information session in Dover for a different phase, and the Seacoast bikers, plus myself, I actually got up and asked that a bike path be allowed to be put through here so that they don't have to do a long route through Millington, come over to Augury Drive, and onto Pease, and then basically back through Pease to get to the same point they're going to with this bike path. And they said they committed they would do that, or at least indicated that they would do that. So I see that as an attempt for people who are passing through Millington, get the shortest route through Millington. That's what they're trying to accomplish. I just don't like the idea that it's gravel is part of it.
Can I add to that? That was the Board of Selectmen, we were on the board of that? Yeah. We were working with DOT to exactly do that, to make it the commuter path more efficient, to go straight from over the bridge into Pease in the north end. And it was, you guys had committed to it, and obviously that's what you're doing here, but what I don't see in here is any signage on either end and how that's gonna act, and actually directing someone to not go into the maintenance facility, but rather continue on the path and on how they get off of the end of Shattuck and so forth. So that really just creating, some signage so that people know where to go.
I agree. I mean, that's why this was added, was at the request of the town. That's why.
Right, exactly. It was obvious that was part of it, but just making sure that, I assume these are not 100% drawings, but.
So I think the point is being made is not as attractive as it could be,
Yes.
the trees and so forth that was being brought up by Jay earlier, or somebody. So I just wanna make sure that we can possibly do that, but the other question I had in front of me right there, I was going to ask, why is gravel not paved? Bikers are traveling on paved all the way down to Dover, across to Dover.
It's paved. There's just no detail for it.
But then more importantly, when you get up to the top of that gravel road, there's a gate. Have you thought about, doing anything with that gate so bikers?
Yep, both those gates are going away on both ends, or at least moving enough to leave like a dedicated path for that. We're moving a gate further to our site from the Woodbury Ave, just so people, if they come down that access road, we, for safety reasons, don't want them going through, or security reasons going through the site. So it'll force them back to that path and around our site.
So he asked us, can you pave it?
It says right on it.
The walking trail is paved.
C-103.
No, listen to what he said earlier. that ground area where the walking path goes onto is gravel.
Right.
The access way to
Oh,
Woodbury
that
Island.
end is going up to Woodbury, it's gravel?
Yes,
It's gravel for about 350 feet.
yes.
There's a, this piece of it is paved. right
Well, that
here.
doesn't make a great commuter path.
So Jerry, what's the purpose of that gravel? Are you gonna use that gravel? Is that gonna be for truck traffic?
I'm sorry, which?
What is the purpose of the gravel driveway?
So they get, a go around and go northbound.
Yeah,
But, I mean, if that's gonna be used on a regular basis, where do you pave it?
we have a lot of entrance ways that are not, I mean, the gravel, and it was.
So, but, I mean, all the state troopers, all the municipal vehicles that are filling up, they're gonna
Most of them will come down the other way.
Yeah, it's not for general.
It's more for access to be able to head northbound with the plows to you reduce the route for.
So the plows are gonna go up gravel
in the spring,
In the winter.
during mud season.
during snowy events?
Good, go either way.
All right, so and ask is, because you have a hill, it's gonna be a road, it's gonna cause problems, it's gonna still take you at the bottom of the hill, it's not gonna be safe for bikers. I'm asking that you pay that, at least for the bikers, and I would recommend you do that probably for your vehicles as well. Because right now, it's a pretty steep hill going up to Woodbury Avenue. Go ahead, next question.
Okay, so two other questions. One is, I see you've got this underground fuel storage tank. Don't actually see any details, but you do have standing water on a pond. So I wanna make sure that the underground fuel storage tank is in, I know it has to be a double layer, but you might consider triple layer because you know it's gonna be wet. So you wanna be able to monitor what's happening between those walls and know whether you've got a leaking tank, so.
Yeah, there's about 25 drawings for that design. We've designed virtually all of the fuel storage islands for DOT. It's not in the plans that you have.
It's probably getting down to the details, but it is a good point, just to make sure you put it in, right double walls.
And that requires a permit from the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, typically you have a monitor for that interstitial space.
It does, yeah. It meets all the requirements.
And then the last question I have is you heard us talking about the previous applicant and talking about their plantings and the comment was made during that discussion that there was quite a lot of asphalt that was gonna get really hot. I realize there are big trucks here, but is there any way that you could try mitigating or breaking this up in such a way that we don't have a huge space of hot asphalt?
Believe it or not, we went through an exercise with DOT. This is as small as it can be with all the turning templates and maneuvering required on the site. So we shrunk it down to the minimum it can be to meet all the turning requirements.
So there's no way that you can get any more trees or islands in there that help break it up?
There's a lot of maneuvering space with the big trucks with all the, the plows and the equipment on
Between
them.
the bridge maintenance building, the salt barn, and the maintenance yard itself, and the spreader hangar, they all have their own truck movement, so it just, for us, it just involves accidents.
I have to, try to break it up and.
Yep.
Just to piggyback on what I just watched a really interesting program about how the world's heating up, and part of the problem is that the surfaces that we have on this world are basically being wiped out with vegetation, which keeps the ground cool, and adding pavement, which is actually heating up the air prematurely. And I know this is a small project when you look at it, so when you try to add some, you said some trees that are cooling, it really doesn't make a big difference, at least in the local area. So again, if you can do that, I think it has some merit, and we all have to do our part in this world to save this world. Because we're heading down the wrong path. So I think that's what the conservation board is looking at as far as trees goes. It really helps it, it not only beautifies, it actually keeps the place cooler. And I know you don't have to do any of this. I hope you do take some of this and.
No, we appreciate the comments, and it's, everyone, we want to work together with everyone.
Yeah, if you had another question.
So I just had a last plea for, I think
And then
the
Jim,
majority of the
Jim,
people that use that path will be bikers, not walkers, that's my belief. And trying to go up that gravel would be just horrendous do it, because I've done it before, driving through where it is now. And you can't ride a bike up through there, so really would appreciate the access for the bicycles there.
Yeah, I think that.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim?
I actually have 5 questions, but I'll make them quick. Andrew brought up a great point, but based on my guesstimate, I actually believe that you've made it as small as possible because it's expense. So asphalt expense, you work with DOT, you try to do that. I actually believe that if you can do more, wonderful. If you can't, I think I understand based on the types of trucks and facilities that you're gonna have. That does not negate what I said originally, which is, if you have no restrictions, the one thing that I would say is trees along the frontscape of the Conservation Commission into this board here, period. Hide it, hide it, hide it. There's nothing you're gonna do to make it look pretty. It's not a building, it's all storage facilities. That was question 1. Question 2, on the bike path. If you look at the last storm, I actually had to hire a dingo, which is this huge bucket loader, to take 6 inches of ice off of our driveway, and we still couldn't get some of it off. So that was off of asphalt. And I was told if that same person was doing a rock driveway earlier and gave up and said it was absolutely impossible, it's gonna be at least 2 months before anyone's gonna be able to get up that road. So if you put in gravel, and we have a storm like we just had, which was, we all, like, everyone lived it, everyone shoveled it, snow blowed it, and that stuff.
I don't get ice, so I know.
So that's my thing, and to the.
Jim, they got their own salt trucks.
You're right, they have big plows.
And plows.
Okay, so it was just a comment that when you said rock, I went, oh God, that's what I just heard. Request town, when did you request or talk to the town in regards to the bike path on this? When did that happen? Because you said there wasn't any communication with the town.
Yeah,
There was.
I don't have an exact date, but it went into the 2018 municipal agreement with the town of Newington.
All I needed to know, thank you. And then the next question is, when you mentioned before, you have multiple facilities throughout the state. I'm gonna ask one question. Do any of those facilities have a enclosed facility where you wash your vehicles?
I don't want to answer that incorrectly. I'm not sure. I don't believe so now, but I don't want to state that as a
I would
sure
love if
knowledge.
you could find out that answer, because what Dennis was saying before was absolutely true. Everything we do in this town is to try to encapsulate, if you look around, we are around water everywhere. And we're trying to be very environmentally conscious, and we have such a small little stamp. We have to go a little bit, not overboard, but we have to be very conscious and do a 360 on everything. And I think that is worth looking at. And if it isn't for here, it would be necessary if you guys would put it in. I think that is something that would go a long way. The last part was John Krebs, thank you very much for setting the table, as I like to say. I would love if prior to meeting starting, we could set the table before we have a conversation, because probably about a third of what we said didn't need to be said. Because we didn't know what the ground rules were. So thank you for doing that and jumping in, because we would have continued to drive down to nowhere. So thank you. I'm all set.
I will say, if it's not, this is not a mirror image of this, but for those of you who drive north occasionally, I don't know when DOT built the facility in Rochester, but it's right off of Spalding on the west side of the road, right before the split. And it's a pretty, it's this facility 20 miles north of here, so. So you can actually see what one looks like.
Chris, you had some more questions.
You'll ask for more landscaping.
Well, that's elevated, or that's below. Even worse.
Just a couple of comments in reference, since we're close to, on the bike lane. I'd like to commend, the commitment was made verbally by Chris Blaschek way back in the 2009-2010 period, and subsequently put in effect. I appreciate DOT honoring that and working as a team to do that. It's going to be a possible addition to the overall bike ban. I've spoken with the Seacoast Area Bike route officers. They are pleased with this. They find the 10, for your information, they find the 10-foot width adequate for two-way biking. so you did your homework there, it's in conformance with the state plan. They would like to ask if you're gonna have gates, as I think the town feels that you need to keep cuts down traffic, to have maybe a 3 or 4 foot bypass there, paved area around those gates so that they could be, so the bikers could pass through when the gates were locked.
Yeah, we will have that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
whether we move the gates aside or someone may actually make them out, but there will be dedicated path for
So
pedestrian
overall,
bikes.
Sabre is not aware of the gravel portion on that. I think you've heard the expression that they would echo that, but from the standpoint, and it is cut down to width. The width of the old Spalding Turnpike, as most of you know, is 34 feet wide. So even with truck traffic back and forth, there's 6 foot plus lanes on each side. So that's very adequate on the northbound side of your site. So, but again, thank you. It's a real credit that DOT followed through with that. And although this is not going to be the recreational bike path direction, because going through these, it is recognized by Sabre as a more direct route, and there will some bikers that have, where speed is an issue, and they will go for it. And there's gonna be additional enhancements of this as part of the overall General Sullivan Bridge access, where bike paths are gonna be taken all the way from Route 108 in Dover, all the way down the Spalding Turnpike, across the bridge, and there'll be enhancements to have better connections to Woodbury Avenue. That's over and above beyond this project. And that's to come, as you said, in 2004, 2005. But this is a good intermediate portion for that. So thank you. Couple questions. Understand your utilities are bi-directional drill underneath there. Will you be dismantling or taking down some of the existing electrical poles that go from Mitchell Lane Circle all the way down to your site currently?
I don't believe so.
You'll just
That would be,
leave them, but they will not be used for
that would
electric.
be Eversource's cloud.
The other question I have is for your new sewer line that you put in during the turnpike construction. Will that sewer access be available for other people to connect to in the future further up towards Mitchell Lane, if necessary? Currently, they have their own sewer line, but I'm thinking if the trade port connection comes in, there may be some construction there, or building there.
That is I believe that is an 8-inch line, and there were multiple stubs in there when we looked at it with the Newington Sewer Department, so I don't see any reason why someone else couldn't connect at the front there.
Yeah, that would just be going through easements and our right of way for DOT for.
Now, my understanding was, and piggybacking on top of Chris's thoughts, was that we replaced an existing town line going under the Swollen. So as far as I'm concerned, are you saying you own it, or is it the town owns it?
We put it in.
Who put it in?
Sewer put it in.
They paid for it?
Sewer put it in.
All right, that answers that question.
Question,
Yeah,
thank
the
you.
stubs are already there.
Okay.
So, correct, just gonna ask one more question. Do we know for a fact that that line is still good after they did the construction?
We put a new sewer line in. Yes.
I know you put a new one in, but do we know that they didn't damage it during the construction?
It's in a sleeve, the line that goes under the Spalding, it's got a sleeve.
And that was done under the last construction project.
Right, he's worried that it's got damage when we did the project.
Yeah, I don't wanna see, I don't know when it went in.
What I wanna get to, I don't want you to build a facility,
Yeah.
it's broken, even though it's brand new, because I've seen brand new broken, and then you come to the town and say, it's broken, we want you to fix it, and we can't, or we can, but at great cost to us. We just wanna make sure you verify that it's actually still functional before you go and build your multi-million-dollar facility.
Scope it.
Just scope it.
Yeah. Well, now you're what's on that record, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just because if you build a multi-million-dollar facility, you don't turn to the town and said, well, it's your line, fix it. But if you broke it and nobody scoped it after you finished your construction, we don't know, it's still whole.
Was that directionally bored though after the road was
I don't know.
done? Okay, I don't know either, I was just
It was
asking.
built before the road was built, right? It was put in as they built the road.
As they built the road, yeah.
Yeah, so it was actually happening over the road.
Yeah.
That is,
I should probably check. Usually they scope it after they're done.
I just wanna make sure it's,
Nothing would happen between now and then, it's not being used. Right?
what's that?
Once they put the line in, they scope it after it's done.
I wanna make sure that was done, make sure it's good.
They usually do that.
Yeah, it's part of our DOT spec that we scope any of the drainage lines, sewer lines, anything that go in, it's one of the specs afterwards, but I just, yeah, I don't know if that was put in before the roadway or after, I don't know.
I just wanna see you build a line and then all of a sudden it comes on.
No, that's a good comment.
Chris?
Sure, give me some indication of your lighting plan, kind of the location of your lights, whether the main lights will be timed for only use during, kind of regular hours, and whether there'll be, motion detectors, that come on there, and also ensure that you're gonna shield them from the turnpike glare, but also consider the glare on wildlife and the weapons around us, pretty rich wildlife.
Most of the lights are on the building themselves. I didn't bring the lighting plan, so I can provide you a copy of that.
I just wanna ask, I think, Chris, are they dark sky compliant? Are they facing down versus out and up?
Yeah, I believe they are.
But a lot of times,
I'll verify that.
but a lot of times the wall packs on the wall are not the ones that are horizontal, mounted horizontally, they're mounted vertically. And the wall packs are very,
Light pollution.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep the light noise, light pollution down.
I noticed you have a flagpole, but I didn't see where it was located, where the state and US flags are located.
It's gonna be very responsible in this round in case of, landscaping, we do that.
Will there be a radio communications center, in the office complex for emergency management, coordination, dispatchers, or anything?
We are not putting a tower at this site,
We
so.
are not like the Rochester, we're not doing a tower.
We did that in Rochester, but I don't think it was needed here, right? That's how we
Correct,
found out.
yeah, they're doing some sort of other repeater to connect it, I couldn't tell you exactly how, but there's nothing on our site that's going, like the big tower for Rochester.
A couple security questions on there. Our fire department, police department, I believe our fire department will have access through the gates and everything.
Yep. We will only probably be gating one side of our facility, so the kind of main access, the one not up Woodbury, the one for Mitchell, won't have gates because of the fuel pumps, so they're 24/7 for fuel, ambulance, fire, whoever, so they'll have access to that on a 24/7 basis.
The gate, if you look right here, just to this side, Cheryl, it's on the gate right here. So that people use the trail can go through, but, there's a gate right there, not even pay.
That's right, and I'm sure you put signage, because right now it's blocked off traffic coming down there, which is good. If not, a lot of people are gonna be curious and turning around, and that's it's only a 16-foot wide roadway actually.
Yeah, on any of those access, normally, unauthorized vehicles do not go down and go on both sides.
I know you've got a fire hydrant on there.
Yes.
Will you be letting our fire department do training once a year to come in, and as if they were attacking a fuel fire at all?
Not a bad idea.
I don't think, I think it's a good idea. We work with a lot of the local fire departments already for a lot of our sheds, so I guess that just would be coordination with the local fire department.
And you just mentioned much earlier on our police department, I know you have state camera systems where all of our local police department have camera feed access that can support security in your area.
That is way beyond, above me. I don't want to speak for how our DOIT security works. Normally, that all gets funneled through our traffic management center.
It's beyond me whether our attorney wants to do that, but we should make that question answer.
Yeah, normally that goes through our traffic management center, and they're there 24/7, so they're like kind of our like on-call security all the time. And they're fed in there on like a live feed, so.
State police has access to all the deals.
Yeah, and state police is in that same building, so. But local police, I don't know.
Thank you.
Yep.
Another question, you have a lot of roof sites there, do you anticipate putting solar panels on your roof?
Yes,
in the
there'll be
future?
solar panels on the backside of the building.
Thank you. I think you have plenty of room for maneuvering around with some large vehicles. You don't have too many outside storage or parking spots. Is there a particular area for parking for your employees that are in the office and other things?
So, yeah, we normally have designated spots for those, we are not quite that far yet. But normally they're, on, you know, one side or the other of the large maintenance shed in the middle. There's only 10 full-time employees, and that's it, we have all 10 employees there, so there's not too many people at the shed.
Will you be trucks break? Will you be parking brakes there, broken trucks there until they can repair?
Any of the truck services, like I said, goes to our mechanical service division, so if they break to the point where we can't drive them, they get towed to one of the satellite garages.
Another question for you. Do you have intention of stacking snow plows off the trucks outside the building in particular areas such as the concrete pad or?
And then we just got back here.
Yeah, there's like a gravel pad out there for them.
Your plan for snow plowing essentially is to push everything off the pavement and the swales. That's all I have. It's good use of the property.
Anyone else? Now, I'll ask one question. Do you have anything to contain fuel spill at your fuel filling station?
This is a setup is a different fuel pad, it's for a concrete one, but there is no other containment around that pad area, other than what you see at a typical filling station.
Well, we see at a filling station, typically we see some kind of, tech pieces of collection area, like we have it right down here at the gas at the service station that we've been talking about, that when you get out to the road, you drive to, they're required to have a collection tank as well as a, drainage system that basically collects it. So I'm just kind of wondering, are you doing anything? It's not a matter of if you have a fuel spill, it's when you have a fuel spill. Are you doing anything to do it? Because it happens at all service stations, just about all of them.
Yeah, we have like that repaving program.
We have that wet pavement, but I don't really, this be designed for the, typically, required and permitted through the state for all of the DOT facilities, it's not a one-off.
It's a cover, right? It's covered, right?
Yeah, it's got a,
It's got a canopy.
Yeah, it's got a
it'll have the-
canopy.
it's got a canopy and a collection,
Spill
a
bed.
roof
Yeah.
drain system under, you know, over it, so it's not gonna wash off. It's got a
Right.
canopy over it.
Is that here you say the tanks are below ground?
Yes, they're right here.
Have you considered putting them above ground?
They're designed for below ground based on the water table. We dug, we have some test pits and some borings. There's tie downs on the tanks. It's completely designed for an underground system.
They're pretty big tanks, too.
This is the front of the building also that probably
Yeah, I mean, if we put those, we have to paint trees on them, because that's.
most visible from the highway.
What did you say if you have to?
Yeah, they're, I mean, they're what, 15,000 gallon tanks, that would be pretty ugly eyesore out front.
Once
75 feet
diesel-
long, that slab.
Yeah.
Security issue too.
And do you have anything that, like without a protection for them or anything? Are they steel? I assume they're steel tanks.
Yeah, they're double wall, there's sensors in them, just the same thing that we put in our facilities. So they got moisture, you know, or whatever, you can speak this probably better than I can, but.
Well, I'm not the fuel guy. We have.
Where's RV?
We didn't bring RV with us.
But yeah, they're double walled, they have sensors on them, we have a maintenance program in-house with our fuel groups where they get checked monthly and, you know, that whole, we have probably a more rigorous procedure than a lot of places.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else before I? Chris?
I'll wrap up. Assuming these tanks are for diesel fuel only and gasoline?
Yes.
Correct.
Yep. And do you plan on any storage of propane
storage of propane we have is when people drop their propane tanks off the highway and we stick them in the shed until we can get them.
And the hazardous materials.
That's funny.
What about deer? Where do you store the deer?
Those kind of good.
Well, Jerry, just a reminder, Jerry, I don't know, you should probably speak to the wetland permit, just so the if the Conservation Commission has any questions
Yes.
about the impacts.
Yeah.
They're fairly minor, but.
Yeah, they're pretty minor.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time with the site specifically.
Oh,
kind of
sorry,
designing
Jane.
that for-
Never mind.
Still on standing time here, folks.
Jerry, forget about that, disregard what I said.
Okay.
I do have one quick question.
Sorry, Jim.
This is for maintenance vehicles, right? Would they be collecting, that carrying it and storing it at the site?
No, we have like specific sites normally, and I mean, most of the time we try not to even do that, cause it's a whole nother issue with having, 100 deer in one place, so most of the time they go off to the side of the road. There's a little bit more challenge during squirrel again, but.
That it? Okay, last chance, anybody?
You
All right.
install any electric vehicle charging stations? No?
That's not in the plan.
Yeah, as of now, no. We only have a handful of electric vehicle fleets. We do have them at certain places at the DOT. But as of now, no. I'm sure that is gonna be coming down the road at some point. Unfortunately, I think sometimes the state moves a little bit slower than other parties, but, they are starting to pop up, but as of right now, we don't have anything.
Thank you.
All right, last thing. This is something, I have a letter here for you. And we already sent it off to Commissioner Sheehan.
Yep.
And did you get the letter?
Yep, we got it yesterday.
Okay.
I don't have any comments really for you, but it is in our front office, and they are looking at it.
And I know you're not the one that does it. What we're trying to do is point out, I'm gonna take this off so I can speak more clearly. We have pointed this out verbally several times at several different points along the way, that we would love to. We've even had people outside of this town who would like to take opportunity to develop that land. The issue is that the state has bought up the last big piece of land that we really have for development. We put all the utilities in there, I talked about the sewer, the gas was in the water, not too far away. And the government is pushing really hard for housing. And we've established this, and had been establishing this for quite a long time, and the state keeps, and every time we establish a place for housing, starting with Pease, where we had affordable housing on Pease, when Pease closed, the state said, no, we don't want it here. And then we established another spot, the state said no, and we tried putting a couple different places to put it. The state's requiring us to have affordable housing, places, identified for it to be done, and this is the last thing that we have with the sewer that is available. The land that's on Pease, which is owned by the state, is right next door to you. It's on top of the hill inside the circle. In fact, on top of the area I'm talking about is the old skeet range that the Air Force used to use. It's an undeveloped site, and it has all the power you need there. There's water close by, there's gas there. The sewer might be the issue. I'm not really sure if that's really something you have to connect up to. But they're really, effectively taking away the last piece of land that we could make available per the state laws and what Governor Sununu was pushing for. So we're pushing back and saying, you're really killing us. I know it's not you guys personally, you're doing your job, you're just doing it, but we're asking the state to reconsider locating on top of Pease. Now Pease is saying, PDA is saying, well, we don't want you here. First of all, they don't want any housing. They've already gone through all of that. So if they don't want any housing, then fine, let's take your land, move you up the hill, put you on Pease. That's not a housing option, it's not a housing, something that they forbid, and put this land up for sale. And that's the whole purpose of why we're putting that, we wrote this letter, because you're putting us in a really bad position. Every time we try to do something, that we're gonna put affordable housing equates utilities, in particular sewer. So it's putting us in a really bad place, and the state doesn't care, but we care. So just be aware of what you're basically doing for us, doing to us or whatever, and we made this known a long time ago, all the way back when Chris was still on board as the, what was his name last year?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
he was,
was
Just a
all the
member
way
of
back,
the committee.
it was all the way back to then, and we continuously try to do things, to bring this up, and we were hoping, I was even hearing rumors, even as of recent, like a short time ago, that, oh, that's not gonna happen, they're gonna sell it. So, we hoped and hoped and hoped, but eventually we got to a point where we had to send a letter off. So we still hope that what we're talking about here, can be at least seriously looked at, and be reconsidered going on Pease. Now, I understand Pease probably doesn't want you having you there either, because you're not gonna give them any money. And that's what they want money for leasing out their land that the Air Force bought and paid for, and then gave it back to the state. So, here's your copy, you can have it, unless you already have it, I won't give it to you, I'll just keep it, but.
yeah, I do have a copy, and like I said, you know, I don't have any comments. for
And
it.
I didn't expect it
It's
to.
sitting in our executive office now, and
Sure.
they are reviewing it.
We considered putting it to Governor Sununu, but at this point, we just wanna see if you can deal with it at the local area. And I guess that's about it, so I think that we're kind of frustrated because half our town has been taken by the Air Force, and then, you know the whole story. And then, more and more land keeps disappearing, and, the state keeps putting more and more requirements on us, and every time we try to meet that requirement, the state makes it difficult for us to try to meet their laws to be compliant with other towns. All right, so, understand the frustration that you hear here tonight?
We are losing James, we gotta,
Sorry, Jim.
we gotta move on.
Thanks, John.
Well,
Anyone else?
this is a conservation commission meeting too, and I just don't wanna lose James, so I can see her fading over there.
Anyone else? If that be the case, then I think we're done for this evening. I hope we can get back to see you at some point with some answers.
Yeah, can you just tell us, will you come back with updated plans, or is this a one and done?
We're required to do the one. I mean, I'd welcome you to send us your comments. I mean, if we could get them in writing, that'd be great. I mean, we wrote a lot of specific things down
I
today.
think I got most of them, but yeah.
I think it
We'll
was
send you the tape.
so, if you can do that.
I'll communicate with Jerry, and if there's any question, I can certainly provide you with a list of, the selling points that the commission and the planning board made tonight.
Okay.
But, at the very least, if you could try to give us revised plans so we can see if there's any of our comments were incorporated in your plans, that would be wonderful. And if you're willing to come back and show us the.
Right now,
final
we're
plans.
only at 65% design, so these comments are timely, I guess.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for coming, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet everyone, appreciate everyone's time.
Consider the comments, and we'll see you hopefully in a few weeks.
You have a good project, but put it in Greenland, right?
No, you're gonna go.
Oh, no, we're gonna finish.
You're gonna finish?
Yes.
The only thing we got is the January 14th minutes.
These are
These two
conservation.
conservation commissions, so you
You have
guys,
nothing.
you guys get that.
And Jane, I don't know, James Hamilton probably helped you out, I have no idea why we're reviewing this from over a year ago.
It was a technical problem, I believe, because it was a Zoom meeting.
Yeah,
And
Martha caught this one.
yeah, and so
Okay.
it was an oversight, you know.
Okay, you got the January 14th minutes from 2021.
I had to retrieve I had to do a big punching pack
Yeah.
search for this, and so I put it together.
So it was not a mistake, it was.
Okay, I had that underlined.
So my apologies.
Okay, so we have review of
Yes, we did.
December 9th.
So are you gonna do January 1st and those are gonna come first?
Oh, yes, okay, yes, so January 14th.
Any questions?
No, it was more the day.
Somebody want to-
I'll walk this out. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
I'll second. All those in favor? Okay. Then we have December 9th, 2021.
Any corrections, Andrew? Okay. You wanna make the motion?
Thanks, Jerry.
I'd like to make a motion.
setting this thing up.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All those in favor?
Follow Pat?
Alright.
Get it twi-
Okay,
you
I
get it
do
twisted.
have a letter from Southeast Land Trust in reviewing, the Barrett property. And she didn't see any changes, that it was still woodland and fields. Mr. Baird did, suggest that there might be a house being built along the southwestern boundary near the old beaver dam. So I don't, but it's not on their
Whose house?
property. I
Oh,
don't know.
like in a butter?
About,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I don't know who that would be.
Yeah, I don't know either, I don't know.
Is that it on the south?
Jane, is this the property, you're talking about the property along that contiguous path that we were trying, there was the Barrett property and the one next to it, and I'm remembering.
All he
By your
said
planner.
was that Mr. Baird informed me that there were no changes other than the usual cutting of firewood. He believes a house may be being built along the southwestern boundary near the old beaver dam. And then she said, to my knowledge, there's no plans to transfer the property, so I don't know if he was, it's a little confusing.
Yeah.
It can be that way, but, she felt that everything was set. What else did I have? Annual report,
I have not done that.
can you do that?
I am so straight out. When does it have to be done?
When was that due, John?
I don't know.
I-
Soon?
I think it's the 14th.
February 14th?
No, I don't, well, I don't know, Martha asked me today.
It's March, so,
Yeah, I would soon, very
yeah,
soon.
soon.
Okay.
I mean, even if it's only a paragraph, Jane, I don't think it needs,
Okay.
it doesn't need to be much.
Just cover the
Can
thing
you
with,
do it, let me know by tomorrow morning?
look at all the good stuff you did last year.
Yeah,
How about a couple
Right.
pictures, they take a lot of them.
I'll have to look up.
Adam's
those.
Adam's Homestead.
No, that's all right.
I will.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I will
Okay.
try to get that done this week.
Okay.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, you may.
May I make a motion to adjourn this, I don't know, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn the conservation committee, but I don't know, is it a joint,
Yeah, we'll close out on, I just want to make sure we haven't got any other business.
to close the conservation committee?
Commission, okay, I'll second that. A third. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you for coming, thanks, Jane.
you're welcome.
I'm sure you're exhausted.
What time do you get up to go to work in the morning, Jane?
7 o'clock,
Oh, okay.
but luckily I'm working from home.
They haven't done it.
I gotta figure out some
Yeah, I
spreadsheets
haven't seen you in a long time.
before I leave for my next trip.
What are you doing now?
I know, but I haven't.
Snowbird,
I haven't been to-
Snowbird, Alta,
Oh, when?
Saturday morning at 3 o'clock.
Oh, my God.
Good golly.
You just got
Hey,
back.
John, you have any other business?
Yeah,
back.
start that Tuesday. No,
Real quick,
Wednesday morning at 1 o'clock.
Well,
Real quick, before,
Jane, we're trying to finish up with the planning board. Oh, Jane.
so before we all leave, I know there were some people like Jim and Chris asking questions about stone masonry, and there's maybe some other people, not about the wetland permit. Just remember, we have the work session with that on Wednesday of next week. It's the only thing on the agenda, I believe. So, you all have those plans. If you need anything from me, let me know, and I can get you more information, get you anything you need, because I'd like to cover some ground. I know that Stoneface had indicated at the last meeting that they would like to get an approval at the end of the month. I thought that was aggressive, because I think there are some issues that have to be resolved. In speaking to the owners and developers of that project, I think that resolving the underground drain, storage of the water is far more important than the speedy approval. So if there's a sense that the DES will work with us and work with them to change, to allow that to happen, and it takes a couple more months to approve the project, they're fine with that. So
John, actually, now that I'm thinking of it, the Conservation Commission said they would consider that, we made a motion. Are we gonna send a letter to DES?
Yeah, I'll probably write a letter and have James sign it, yeah.
All right.
I'll talk to them and see how they wanna handle it. And Eric Weiner is gonna be a little bit involved too, so, only because he knows some of the players. And it might be one meeting we're done, and we can't, we're not gonna proceed.
We'll probably have one to the planning board as well.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll see you next Wednesday at 6:00.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yes, actually, I have one thing. Rick, you're gonna have to help me here. There's two books that Rick, when he was selecting, actually used and still use. I don't know what they are. And I think they should be bought for everybody. I'll wait a little. Do I have everyone's attention, please? Thank you. Rick, can you please come to excuse me, the what? A hard road to travel, would love to be bought for everyone on here. And what's the second one that you mentioned? The Right to Know laws. There's two hardcover or softcover books.
I don't know where Bob got that, but we have a hard road to travel in my office. I think Chris has a copy. It is a great book.
I would love to have each member have their own copy. I think we have a budget for it. We've never spent money on materials. This is a material that I personally, after talking with Rick, my head popped when I learned what I learned. So it's a great book.
Okay, why can't we share the two that we have? I don't think all of them can do it at the same time.
I mark my books up. I'll buy my own if this board does not want to buy it.
It's only,
Remember,
Chris, you work, I think.
you have to organize the book to be able to use it efficiently, at least my way of doing it. I don't know how everyone else works.
I took that training session through the New Hampshire Municipal, and they gave me that.
Was it a good session to go through?
Yeah.
What is it again, please?
Municipal, New Hampshire Municipal. And it was, I forget, it was there's one on the planning board, there's one on the ZBA.
Did you do it, Bob, did you do it, remotely or in person? Zoom?
I had to do it during Zoom,
Oh, that's great.
within the last year, but they sent me the book.
That book's been around.
Okay, so
It's
then
a great book.
if that's the case, and there's one here, and anybody else wants it, I can get it through that. But the second book is the one that I think everyone should have. I'm telling you, based on
The Right to Know law?
the Right to Know law.
That's a
Yeah.
federal, that's not a federal.
I'll find out where to keep
I
this.
don't mind buying them, it's just probably if we can have.
It is available online, it's a data pack.
I'll just buy my own.
There's a primary book that you have, I agree with you, Bob. Having a printed version is much nicer to look at.
That's just
But
one for
it is
everyone.
available online, and there's a supplement that was put out about a year and a half ago that addresses changes to the laws, such as power companies no longer have to get your permission to cut trees on your property. So, all they have to do is send you a postcard, and if you never receive it, that's your tough luck. That's through the legislature or to you.
You get a discount through the town because they're not.
Why don't we just go ahead and order half, 8 of them somewhere?
Yeah.
That's just one,
It's a really good reference book.
I have no problem with that. I didn't know if there was something you didn't read once and then you put it away, now you use it again, that was something.
It's a good reference for if we're gonna do any
All right.
trail.
Let's just go ahead, that's what I did, Jim. All right, anyone else? All right, I'll look past motion, adjourn.
So,
Any second? Sorry, Russ, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Don't forget, Monday, Valentine's Day. You said what the last meeting
That's pretty. It is. complicated.
Yeah.
Could you
Well,
take
I'm
that?
saying,
All right.
The building.
I think Jane wanted, yeah, I think Jane, wait.
There's nothing we can do about it.
No, I knew nothing about
I
it.
can tell them, what I'm trying to say is that everyone else do it, but you won't do it, and instead of just. They didn't see it.
Neither do you.
Here's my suggestion.
But, I'm just saying, on paper.
Every applicant has certain things that we should know about, maybe none, in this case, even if people
I
are
know,
here.
you come up
Folks,
with.
this is information only, we're here to ask questions. That's it. I wouldn't have asked half my questions,
You were very
half my time.
Every city is governing municipal organizations. And bring offer to us.
We all have.
By the way, just so everyone knows what's going on, Key Development Authority is looking at putting in two potential large, air cargo facilities over there. One is on the existing theater, and one is on the north rim. So, we ought to all be paying attention to that, when you hear about things, it's sort of in the newspaper, but at the same time, it seems to be getting, the fast track, I guess is the right word, what I'm hearing, and a lot of it, I think a lot of it's already been discussed or questioned. Going back several months at least, and people were aware of it, but we're just finding out about it. So, for whatever that's worth, just be aware, because that's gonna be nighttime flights, heavy trucks, possibly, we don't know for sure what they're
Well,
doing. We don't know for sure.
I read the thing, it said no nighttime